G'day guys, welcome to the Eurasian Night Vision. You know what I mean, night vision. I'll keep the comedy for later on then. Somebody needs to get his sleep. Yes, Richard, you gotta go, Marco, good to see you here. Jules, good to see you. And Richard sends his dear warm regards as well. Early question here, Harry. At least the last time you have said that you get 10,000 IUs from half an hour. It depends on your skin melanin. So depending on how lily white you are, I'm more lily white potentially than you. I don't know, maybe not. Depends on the intensity. Between about 10:30 to about 3 o'clock is the strongest sort of UV in those hours. And if it's between those hours and it's a quite intense hot day, you could get anything between 10,000 to 20,000 IUs, depending on how much of your skin is exposed. Obviously, the more the skin is exposed, the more you will get within half an hour to an hour. So it depends on a lot of things: skin complexion, skin quality, the amount of cholesterol you have. There's a lot of things that are at play. But obviously, we start from first principle, which is exposure, and then the other sort of nutrients that are required in that regard. Is this only in midday sun? Yep, exactly. How much can one get in winter? Maximum evening, very little. There's only a couple of days in winter where you can actually get quite a bit. And I would literally, in those days, you literally have to strip down to get just a couple of 1,000 IUs, if you're lucky to get that. So yes, so we do get some. Don't get me wrong, we do get some. And what we do is, as we come out of summer, our vitamin D levels decline. But how fast they decline will depend on two factors: how much we're getting in the food. So we've got the potential, if you're eating cod liver oil, eating a couple of, dairy foods and a couple of different types of animal foods that have got, like fish and types like that have got stored vitamin D. You can actually get some vitamin D from those animal foods. But, and here's the big but, it all comes down to, the amount of fat you've got in your diet, all these sort of factors, cholesterol, fat, because they are fat-soluble vitamins after all. So when you're usually if you're having animal foods, not a problem. So it can vary in winter. But I can get from food in winter, cod liver oil and all that, I can get well over 1,000 IUs. Easy. I can, from just food, I can nearly get 2,000. I probably can get another that amount on a very warm day. On an overcast day, maybe I'll get 500 IUs. It will vary, but as long as I'm just sort of replenishing and I'm slowing down how much loss. And then there's the other side to the coin. How sick are you? That means how sickly are you? How healthy are you? The healthier you are, you're going to basically end up using less vitamin D. As far as your immune system requirements will go down. So how inflamed are you? What sort of environment are you in? All these things go up depending on a lot of factors. So it's multiple factors at play in that regard. So if you're highly inflamed, your immune system is going to be more. If you've got a leaky gut, you're definitely going to have some autoimmunity. Your immune system basically is going to be at play. There's a lot of factors, and they will bleed through some of the micronutrients. It's just the reality of things. So I would say in summer, try to maximize the amount of sun exposure nearly to every day, so you can build up very high levels of vitamin D, and that's what I do. So and Bjorn basically rubs it on his balls, you know. As long as you can have a bit of fun as well with vitamin D supplements, spray on. That's true, Bjorn. But yes, as long as you don't succumb to any of the other behaviours of Frankie, because he used to do that as well. Just kidding, I'm just joking. Just no pun intended. You got to excite them. I wonder where T1 is. He actually appeared earlier, making a sly remark, and he hasn't appeared again. Apparently, him and Sky, you did it wrong. Working up their evil wares to basically troll the other carnies. Yes. Skullduggery from those two lowlifes. They deserve each other. Yeah, look, I hope that sort of explains, Marco. So, yeah, if you can maximize as much through winter, through foods in particular, we would have had coal fish in the colder climates, the type of fish that have got a far more higher levels, like salmon and stuff like that have got higher levels of vitamin D. So we would have maximized those type of foods in our diet in the winter months. And, cod liver oil would have been a big thing. I mean, go back a couple of decades, mothers were giving their children constantly cod liver oil and taking it themselves as well. So we had practices that basically maintained good levels even through the winter. And the majority, even in as I said in my earlier live stream, even in paleo times and earlier times, humans, this is why we developed civilization along rivers. Humans lived on coastal areas and rivers. We never lived inland. Why? Because it was really hard to get access to a number of different foods. So we accessed some, even the ancient Greeks, when I did the isotope analysis, all humanoids, when you look at it, they always access some fish in the diet and a lot of ruminants. So it's quite clear through the evidence that we were accessing these because we need them. There's also a belief that when at some point in our distant past, humans went into South Africa and then sort of returned back up through the sort of lands we would call the Swahili corridor through the Eastern African part. So basically, we just moved through there. The sort of those remaining humans, it was down to a couple of thousand or whatever. We don't know exactly. There's a lot of theories but I won't go into it at this point. But they did access a lot of fish, and it became part of our tradition. So we lived along rivers and coastal areas. So we accessed fish, and we accessed, a lot of ruminants. But in the colder climates to the north, the fish quantity was slightly higher. It's the same thing when we were further down in southern Africa, as if we sort of knew that we needed more of these foods to have healthier brains and stuff like that, and also to provide for the sort of the vitamin D hormone that we can't get very easily unless we're in this sort of in warmer climates. So it's quite interesting in that regard. But the more exposure, the higher the levels as you're going into winter and autumn and stuff like that, the better. The problem is we're indoors all the time. We're in offices. We hardly bear any of our skin for a whole lot of reasons. And we tend to basically be very deficient most of the year round, the majority of the population. So that's why, even though I don't normally recommend a lot of supplements or stuff like that, in some sort of circumstances, as an earlier, adding those sort of things in can be a useful way of actually getting our levels up and then trying to get it from nature and the food and stuff like that going forward. But keep an eye on it. And if you do take that sort of step, do check, make sure that you are being able to cover from the sun and from food sufficient levels. If you can't, then you can't make lifestyle changes. You may have to supplement a bit. that will be individual based on different people. So you will have to look at that, so. Yep. And yeah, I did notice you saying, yep. So, yep, you're definitely, with a name, Mueller, yep. So, yeah, you're definitely, just your first name threw me a bit. That's the only, the given name, because it can be a Spaniard type. I just didn't, I sort of looked a bit more carefully. And, yeah, so really, that's more with circadian rhythms. That's actually getting out and actually telling your body that you're basically, it's morning now, or telling your body it's starting to go into the evening now. So let's ramp up melatonin. And then you need to protect your eyes and your body to some extent with blue blocking bulbs and glasses to minimize the amount of exposure you have in the evening so you can maximize melatonin. So, me, I've got this, and then I've got the Roy glasses on later on to basically for the later hours. And that will basically maintain good melatonin, and I will end up getting better sleep in the evening, which I do. So, very important. G'day, Melina. Yep, we did that before. Yep. Yes, my old man's got blue eyes as well. Yes, I got the green eyes. So, oh well, can't have everything. It's it varies. I'm not sure about Queensland, because Queensland has varied. Further south, it's less. Further north, it's more. And it sort of then drops off. It doesn't really go any higher after a certain latitude. I just can't remember off the top of my head now. I remember seeing the sort of the bands, and they do vary in the southern parts, like northern New South Wales and southern Queensland. They do vary quite a bit compared to other parts of Queensland. It's just because they're semi-tropical. They're not, so it. But I just cannot remember the exact things. But the best time for the strongest is definitely that mid 10:30 to 3 o'clock. Those earlier hours is really good for your circadian side, getting out. The near infrared the sort of that red light spectrum, which is really good. So, oh, thank you, Bjorn. I feel much better now. It's probably for Jules and a few others, not me. Flash will get you everywhere, mate. Yeah, exactly. What do you recommend for infrared therapies? There are some full spectrum lamps and some with only B and C radiation. Don't know what to buy. There's a number of issues with lamps. There's you've got the EMF side of things. So if they're not very good quality ones, they could actually have a higher certain types of frequencies, like they may not clear out some of the, like they'll probably cover the sort of blue spectrum, but they probably may not cover some of the green spectrum and stuff like that. So they may not be as good in that regard. There's manufacturing issues depending on the brands. I've heard there's a whole lot of things. If you're going to buy any type of lamp, make sure it'll have to be a slightly better quality one. It's something that I did want to look into, but I haven't actually had a chance to really look into. I know a bit about it, but I don't want to actually recommend anything on just a little bit of information. I don't personally have anything like any lamps or anything like that. So yeah, I couldn't recommend anything for you right at this point. There's a few other YouTubers that actually have looked into some of this sort of stuff. Check their posts. A few other carnivores and see what they've come up with. They've done some research into it, and but just Google and see what comes up. And if anybody in our carnivore community, some people there's also that the guy who's the high intensity health guy. Trying to remember his name now. God, and he has a video on this sort of on this subject matter as well. So he's got some good information. There's a couple of others, but that sort of stuff, check it out. I haven't really looked into, I know about red light therapy and stuff like that, and I do have red lights in my place that block all the other spectrums, and I have them in the evening on. But in terms of lamps, I really haven't looked into the quality of different lamps. So yeah, sorry, can't help. Okay, Lumen. Okay. I don't know anything about the product, so check it out. Hopefully could be useful for you. Oh, I did notice. Thanks, you're an animal. Yeah, thanks, mate. Appreciate it. It allows audio files to be transmitted on our light to stimulate specific gene functions. Okay, never heard that. Look, I know that certain light frequencies can have an effect epigenetically, but I don't know whether I'd really be interested. You're an animal. I'll check it out myself. Lumen. This is the Lumen photon. I'll actually check it out and see what research this is based on. So that would be interesting to check it out. Thanks. That's exactly it. You've actually explained it better than I did. Bjorn, thank you. That's exactly it. Being metabolically healthy seems to be important in sustaining a good vitamin D status. That is perfect, because the reality is we as humans, if we're obese, very heavy, and have got a lot of fat cells, we can absorb a lot of that vitamin D into those fat cells, and really it just sucks it all up and doesn't leave enough. And if you've got insulin resistance, very hard to get into the cells like vitamin C. Even you can add as much vitamin C into somebody with diabetes, and they still get peripheral neuropathy. They still basically get a whole lot of damage to, and they sometimes lose limbs. So the reality is, if you're really sick, a lot of this sort of stuff sometimes may not help as well. Yeah, that's true. Well said. DJ Project, just good to see you. And Soza P, good morning to you as well. Thanks. Stand up for the Eurasian. I'm not lasting much longer. If you got to sleep, you got to sleep. Checking your green eyes. Yes. We've got the best eyes. I keep on telling my father, Dad's got blue eyes, and he tells me, I've got better eyes than you. And I go, okay, Dad, good on you. Another blue-eyed. Jules, you got blue eyes as well. Does that mean, did you say, you said I've got tan skin, black hair, but the blue eyes? Does that mean you don't, or you do? It's sort of, anyway, who cares? It's actually, the thing is, the disadvantage of having blue eyes, you basically get a lot more reflectability, or even with green eyes, but not to the degree of blue eyes, you actually get far more, it's much more difficult when there's too much light around. So it's much, you get far more of this sort of the blinding effect of a lot of light, like intense light. So where brown eyes actually tend to basically do the opposite. So yes. Howdy. Yeah, but it's a question of what their quality is as well. So that'd be interesting. But is the rice diet is the high rice diet of most poor Asian countries the reason for their underdeveloped physical status? Rice is completely devoid of nutrients. It's just pure carbs. To some extent, it's not the actual rice. It's basically the lack of a sufficient protein. Basically, when the Japanese adopted after the Second World War, a lot of like dairy got reintroduced in, because their previous emperor had sort of limited dairy. And then after the Second World War, a lot of dairy came back into the culture. And together with dairy and meat, the Japanese got a hell of a lot taller. So they dramatically increased their height over a number of generations. So compared to the past. So yes, high quality animal protein makes a big difference. That's what it always has. If you take a look around the world, there have been plenty of where we've found humans that have basically, like on certain islands, have basically shrunk in size or whatever. Again, it's because of lack of sufficient animal protein. Simple as that, This is why people in the colder climates up north and all that, like places like Norway and places like that, they've had multiple generations of high levels of carnivory, because there was only seasonal plants of very low quality, and primarily people were dependent on dairy, meats, and seafood. That was it, primarily. So, speak of the devil, the little toad turns up. You are murder, meat is COVID. Oh, God, that's shit. I mean, that's not trolling. I mean, get a life. That's not, you're weak as piss. I mean, you want to see trolling? This is trolling. Where was it? I had a vegetard that basically tried to have a go at me. I'll have to find it now. You got me going, Blinky. You got me going. I gotta get a Blinky. So where was it? God, so many damn comments I've actually put in. I just realised. Fuck now. Do I ever stop? Probably not. Trying to find the comment that some vegetarded individual put up. Let me just go to I'll have to go to my history. Damn. History. Let's look at the history. Yeah, but that's the main thrust of it, is that basically, And it's rice wasn't necessarily the only thing. They didn't consume necessarily large amounts of rice because that costs money, and there was only a certain level of productivity. Don't look at today's world where we have tractors and stuff like that. We have high levels of productivity. We can produce massive amounts in terms of calories per person. They only had a small portion. You take a look, traditionally, even in Indonesia, it was basically some leaves that wrapped a bit of rice, a bit of vegetables, and a bit of seafood or chicken. It was a very little, a little bit of protein, a little bit of energy, and some other cooked as a filler, and that was about it. 3 meals like that, and a lot of physical work. So these people were undernourished, and so I just barely had enough to keep going and working for their feudal masters and lords, and so would tend to be quite short for that reason. So that's really the sort of reality. Here it is. This was one of vegans. Oops, wrong. Shit. Get it right, Harry. It was one of vegan deterioration. And she had this one. And I just put a comment here. Poor kids. Their parents are more concerned about animal suffering than their own children's suffering on their misanthropic diet. And I actually put that comment against this video. And there was a number of people that actually commented right through here, including Bo had a remark and a few others. And then this stupid, look, this is the piss poor. This is the piss poor equivalent to T1. You're as brain fogged, T1, little toad. You're as brain fogged as this vegan. And look what he says. Humans are frugivores. Cooked food is toxic. We've only been cooking food for 1.5 million years. Viruses do not exist. Absolutely brain dead. There is no pandemic. That's sort of, there's an issue, but it's not at pandemic levels. There's sort of a half-truth there. Vaccines are toxic. Not necessarily. The current ones that just haven't been tested, and we don't know how efficacious they are, so they could be problematic. A number of them are problematic, especially the mRNA and stuff like that. So there's no nuance or no intelligence. And then he goes, knowledge and proper education helps a lot. So he believes that he actually is educated. So this is how you troll properly, T1. I said, it seems education failed you, Mr. High Priest of the veg-tarded morons. You see that? That's just a go for the juggler, mate. Go for the juggler, for the throat. And then for most of our evolution, I say, the planet was too cold to provide us with fruit. And until modern refrigeration, it was only seasonally available once a year in most parts of the world and twice seasonally in the tropics. So I suspect you frugivores eat your own shit over most of the remaining year. And then I have the remarks. And there's, is my little woke veg-tard suffering from acute brain fog? That's how you troll, T1. That is how you troll. I have to give you some sort of education. I have to help you. You're struggling, I see. Anyway, back to this annoying poor person with glasses. What's the definition of metabolic health, you think? Yes, being on a species-appropriate diet. The lack of metabolic health is being on an inappropriate species diet, like the veg-tards. My girlfriend takes thyroid hormones, but doesn't want to take them anymore. She's afraid she gets tired again, like in her teenage years before she got them. What do you do? Anyway, our dear Luke Gear, from Brazil, Well, he listened to me a couple of months ago, and he basically upped his getting out in the sun and increasing his vitamin D. He's actually pushed up his vitamin D. What do you say? It's quite high. It's in the was it 60 or 70 nanograms per milliliter. So it's really at the high end. So he's been out sunbaking and really pushing. You know what? He's been feeling fantastic. He's reduced basically his, generally his shit diet and shifted more to animal-based diet. And in combination with the vitamin D and sunbaking, he feels fantastic, more energized. And even though he's taking a smaller dose of the thyroid thing, hormones he's taking for the autoimmune thing, he thinks it's probably gone away. I've encouraged him because he went back and got his vitamin D levels, and that's how we found out. He just recently told me. I should have actually asked him on the program, but I privately asked him after the program. We had a bit of a chat. And on top of that, he basically is feeling fantastic. He thinks he probably doesn't need the thyroid meds. Because remember, it's an autoimmune disease. What controls the immune system? Vitamin D. Always has. The reason why we've got all these autoimmune diseases is for a number of reasons. Our digestive system has been damaged because of inappropriate diets for most of our lives. And as a consequence, we're not digesting things properly. We're not having stomachs which have very low pHs to break down food, to denature the food down to the constituent amino acids and fatty acids. So there is no protein reactivity. The body will take those amino acids, bring them in, and then reincorporate them based on gene transcriptions to the type of things that the body will utilize. But if you don't have good enough stomach pH, what's going to happen? Unfortunately, you will end up getting stuff in your digestive tract. And then if you've got damaged gut lining, that stuff will get into the bloodstream and will lodge lectins, gluten, all these sort of things will lodge in different tissues and create different reactivity. Whether it's basically a knee problem, creating arthritic sort of thing, or whether it's in the thyroid or different, there's genes that make you more susceptible for one thing or another. So the reality is you basically have to fix these things. You have to fix the gut. You need to eliminate the foods that are causing the problems. You need to clean the diet. If you've got any autoimmune disease, you really have to go back to base level. Sort out, find out why you're not, meat and salt will increase your acidity, your stomach acidity, which is what you need. But if there's a problem there with H. pylori, there was somebody just recently said, there's on the live stream, the previous live stream, I actually commented and actually provided that person with some information about how taurine helps seal the actual stomach lining, actually fixes it to a large extent, helps sort of repair the gastritis type effects, but you have to take a much higher dose. And if you're on blood meds or any other sort of stuff, you sort of have to pace yourself and just go and check the comment that I actually provided for somebody else. There's information there in that regard. But on the other hand, you really need the vitamin D. The vitamin D actually will close those tight junctions. And let's not forget that also we've got the, like DAO. Well, saturated fats and monounsaturated fats actually help increase DAO. So plus with vitamin D and good beneficial bacteria with B vitamins for 3 months, a B50, that all helps. But those beneficial bacteria also require, funnily, in a funny way, they also require far more vitamin D than the pathogenic bacteria. Isn't that surprising? So if we don't get enough beneficial vitamin D, and the funny thing is the bacteria, because I'm far more primitive than we are, than the complex organisms that we are, they basically will take both D2 from plants and D3. They will take any. So they can utilize either type. So, there are all sorts of options, but in order to fix autoimmunity, you really have to fix the immune system and properly regulate it. And the best regulator is basically things like, selenium, zinc help in that regard, and they're only in animal foods. Plus, the key component, MK4 plays a bit of a role, so does retinol, but the big daddy of them all is vitamin D. It's a hormone. It's not a vitamin, it's really a hormone, and it plays a big role in autoimmunity. You can actually Google and look at PubMed, and it's just one after another. So, yeah, you've got to really fix your vitamin D status if you're going to fix your thyroid issue. And then you have to taper off the actual, so you taper off. And if you don't feel fantastic, you slow down the tapering off until you get back to a base level. And it may mean that you're still sort of fixing up your gut lining. A lot of things are still being healed and sorted out. So it can take a bit of time. You've got to be patient and persevere with these things. Yes, and well said also. Yep, magnesium plays a big role as well. But you get more than enough in a carnivore diet. Check out I did a video on about magnesium and magnesium requirements, and we excrete about 120 milligrams, and our requirements on a carnivore diet are much lower. If you're not on a carnivore diet, you may need, like if you're on especially on a standard diet, which refined carbohydrates tend to use more magnesium and more thiamine. So that's the only proviso. And most of it we can get from food if we're on a species-appropriate diet. If we're not, we may need more because our body requires more thiamine and magnesium when we're on a species-inappropriate diet. But when we're on a species-appropriate diet, we need less. Our riboflavin goes up. That's the only thing on a carnivore diet or a species-appropriate diet. So, but, when you look at meat, you eat a big steak, you get 3 times the RDI. So it's a non-issue in terms of B2. Anyway, my mother is Brazilian, but my dad was ginger. I got his blue eyes. There you go. Yes, I didn't get my dad's blue eyes, even though in my genetics I have the possibility. It didn't actually happen. I just got green eyes. But one cannot reverse something that's already given. You got what you got. That's it. I can tell you if it's sunny outside. I can't even open my eyes. Yeah, exactly. That's the issue. Exactly. Blue eyes, when it's very sunny, you really struggle to open it. Yeah. And that's the thing. And I noticed it even with green eyes, that susceptibility. So where people who have, majority of humanity has brown eyes, tend to not have that problem. So, yes. That's why I do wear sunnies when I go out far more than many other people for that reason. Yes. So there is a downside to it as well. Oh, my little troll friend. Oh, you and Sky scheming against your dear friend Roy Archers. I'll tell Roy on you. He'll give you a really good spanking. Here we go. What did you start with? Exactly. That was a quote from Sky, you muppet. Where is she? Why didn't you turn up and actually, chicken, Sky, you're a chicken. The toad and the chicken. Oh, God. Hey, I need to look at the amateur hour in progress. Oh, thanks, sir. Thanks, mate. Oh, with friends like you, who needs enemies? Can you put yourself on timeout for a while? It's your fault. You're supposed to leave the trolling. God almighty, these two. I bet she has. I bet. Think of chunk of vaccines are scams. So much fraud in research. Just can't trust it. Look, there's a lot of shenanigans that happens in different parts of research and all that. Problem is, it's the old vaccines like the Novavax and stuff like that, where they're only using spike proteins. It's basically deactivated real virus, and they just use a medium to regrow it. So that is basically like getting a low dose exposure to the actual virus itself, because it's similar proteins. That one's probably the safest, because that's very similar to a lot of the flu vaxes and stuff like that, the traditional flu vaxes. The new stuff, which is the mRNA, which has come out of the cancer research and a whole lot of others, I have a lot of misgivings for those because of potential autoimmunity and a whole lot of other issues, which we haven't really researched properly. And we shouldn't be experimenting on people without sufficient research. We should only use the more traditional methods and not these methods and especially when we're forcing them onto people with very spurious research to back them up. That's my concern. But if you have to, for whatever reason, be forced or feel compelled, go for the ones that are more the traditional type. I am going to do a video on it. I just haven't got around doing it. What options are available for people who want to go down that path. In some countries, like at least even I actually asked at work, can I actually decline? And I was told I could, but it's probably going to be frowned on. So I still haven't made up my mind. But if they don't actually offer the one that I feel is the safest, which is more traditional, I probably may go out and do it externally just to basically keep the management off my back. You know, I've got about 6 years to retire, and so I've got too many benefits and too many things locked in to basically throw away, sort of pension benefits and all sorts of other things. So it's not that easy, you know, and these people, the way they're behaving is they're not making people's lives easier either as well. Yes. By Harry's Master Trial course. Thanks, Bjorn. God, you know what? Blinky's going to be emailing me. Can I join? Can I get the course? Freaking hell. He should pay us. God, on what? What? For the woefully poor trolling that you do? I mean, God almighty. I consider you and T2 as my prime trolls to go out there and troll the world, and you're doing a piss poor job. You know? I mean, I do a better job, as you saw, demonstrated. Oh, God. Yes, where's the Roy? 15 minutes here. He'll appear. And this, you know, poor sod will fuck off. I can testify that one of my friends cured her Hashimoto's with keto and no longer takes any thyroid meds. And that was just keto. Yep, exactly. There are many people that actually deal with that. As long as basically they are, most people that do keto as well, they also basically, you know, focus on the vitamin D and the fat soluble vitamins as well, because I did as well. And that really helps. And so I don't think it's just keto alone or carnivore alone. The vitamin D is essential. You know, when it comes to autoimmunity, it's really important. And I think just looking at, you know, where Luke is at the moment, he's more confident. He feels more comfortable. You can see him, you know, Luke Gear from Brazil. He feels more relaxed. A lot of things are much better. And he's actually told me, we spoke privately after, and he's feeling really much better. Great. So he thinks that probably he doesn't need the meds. But as I said to him, I said, taper off them slowly so you don't get any reactions, and find out, pressure your doctor or go to another person and get the test done to find out if you don't have any antibodies, then you need to come off and taper off it slowly. It's like any med, some of these meds, you got to taper off slowly, and you don't want to stay on them for too long because you could end up on the other side from hypo to hyper, thyroidism. So you need to taper off them in an appropriate manner. Yeah, thanks, Jules. Exactly. Species appropriate diets do wonders, even the ones that are partially. G'day, Scotty. Good to see you, mate. Yes. We'll discuss this later, my dear friend. Blinky will send you a complimentary one. Yes, he's there, locked away. He will appear soon. Blinky. Which foods heal gut lining? I can't eat eggs or dairy. Is it something like meat broth helps? Meat broth helps. But also vitamin D, the fat-soluble vitamins. Remember, your gut is made primarily of collagen. There are certain enzymes called matrix metalloproteinases, MMPs. They regulate collagen. And it's the fat-soluble vitamins, retinol, MK4, and vitamin D that are the big players in regulating collagen-degrading enzymes. So if you want good collagen structures, good tight mucosal layers, you really need things like vitamin D. Get your vitamin D status up, and that will help. And, things like broth and stuff. And, if you're reactive to eggs, use broth. It does have certain collagen type amino acids. So does eggs, which are pretty good as well for the gut lining. But some people, just react because it's certain types of proteins that they just react to. It's just the way it is. Once you've fixed your lining, you may not have a problem anymore. But vitamin D plays a big role, and getting enough protein in as well. Meat, broth, those sort of things, are good. But the vitamin D is very important. The fat-soluble vitamins are so critical to dealing with gut lining and getting out all the stuff that actually damages that gut lining. Some people are more susceptible than others when it comes to gluten and lectins. Some are less. So, you may be more sensitive to lectins from all sorts of foods, including some of those from, within the sort of the egg and dairy type. So it depends. It depends. So there could be a number of things, but, and also genetics does play a bit of a role there in that regard. But I find that even people that supposedly have these sort of genetics, when they get on a species-appropriate diet, what happens is those genes get silenced and it becomes less of a problem. But as a transition, stick to meat and broth and fat-soluble vitamins. And, that should basically really help. The other thing is you also want to increase your B vitamins, like B50 for 3 months, together with good doses of vitamin D from the sun, preferably, or from some level of supplementation. And what that will do is that will help grow those beneficial bacteria, and those beneficial bacteria will displace the pathogenic ones, which break down some of that mucosal layer. So there's a lot of things that you can actually do, in that regard to improve the general gut microbiome, which is also an important element to have good gut lining. So it's a multifactorial type thing, but the meat and Meat, salt, and vitamin D are big players in that regard. Okay, what's your voice? Is great while sleeping. Should do health story vids. Have a good day all. Oh, do I help with sleep? Do I? See you, Tinks. Even the troll loves bone broth. There you go. He likes a bit of a boner as well. Oh, I couldn't get away with it. Yes. Andrew, Terry, and B. Yep. Thanks for reminding, Melina. And there are videos in regards to how it can actually fight even C. diff and a number of other pathogens, but it has to be those specific strains that actually are the ones that actually really put the boot into those nasties. Yeah, it is. It is. Broths are good. I do the occasional broth now and then. I should do it more often, but I don't. It's more out of laziness. Yes, Mousie's going to crash. He's off to bed. Harry, I had a bad bacteria infection this week. Had to take antibiotics. Don't want to, but anyway, got wrecked taking. Gut wrecked. Yep, taking 36 billion kefir and 30 and 63 billion probiotic. Anything else I should do? The B vitamins. You got to take the B vitamins. You got to selectively support with the B vitamins and vitamin D. Jules, you're in the tropics, so you just get out in the sun. You'll get enough vitamin D. You don't need to supplement, and you basically need to take B50s for at least. Now, you took only one course of antibiotics. That would probably knock things by half. So you probably only need six weeks of like high dose B50. You probably don't need the 3 months. Probably 6 weeks, 1.5 is probably all you need just to restore back to good levels, I would say. So just make sure you don't get any of the sort of crappy stuff like which has got cyano, so it has proper methylcobalamin, methylfolate, it has, all the, doesn't have any sort of strange sort of, there's cyano, cobalamin and, and some of the other crappy stuff that's out there in some of the supplements. The one that I actually mentioned last time on iHerb, which has got, just go check there, you'll find the one, which is the best B50 with the methylcobalamin. I think I actually put a link on one of the live streams. I can't remember now. At the end of this one, I'll whack another one there on. I'll pin a comment just to do that. You mean I've got green envious eyes for you? Probably not. Timestamp for further trolling. I'm glad. He's a bit. Oh, dear friend, it's been a busy beaver. I wonder where T2 is. I heard a rumor that maybe T1 is T2 in disguise. Is that true, T1? What do you say about high intensity exercise for best results and health as a natural athlete? Do you have the same stance as Bart? Yes. Thanks, Sarah, for answering this question. So whatever Bart's actually answered, I agree completely. I do I did actually mention in the live stream when he was on the live stream earlier, and I haven't seen his morning one because I was asleep, but we did chat a bit. But I do high intensity, like I will go from the second floor in my building where I'm located now to the 9th floor, and I will sort of jog all the way up. So I will pace myself and then pant all the way up. I go up the hill, and then people that know where where the North Hobart post office is, I go straight up that hill up to Mount Stewart to the top there. Takes less than a quarter of an hour, and sort of then stop there, do some push-ups against. There's actually a post box thing there where they actually, people can put their letters, and I usually sort of do some exercise against that, like some push-ups and some other shit like that. Then I go down this walkway where there's sort of like bars, and I sort of do some hanging stuff. I do some sort of crouching sort of things and a few other things like that, and combine at least between a few of those things. Like I'll do 25 push-ups, then 25 push-ups, then 25 push-ups, then 25 push-ups when I get home, against walls or different things or different structures. So I did different things like that. And then when I get home, I do weights. But it's that short amount of high intensity, which is what I do. Get the heart rate really high up, and then basically sort of ease off and then go home, sort of thing. And I do the same thing at work by, basically jogging up the stairs. It's sort of a jog run because there are other people coming down, so you have to slow down a bit. But by the time you get to the top, you're still keeping some intensity, sometimes more than other days. If I get to the 9th floor, I will continue up towards the actual roofing area if I haven't felt that I've done as intense, until I really force myself to go, where I'm sort of panting and stuff like that. So I get my heart rate as high as I can. So, yeah, I do agree with more of that. And if you're, exercising for marathons, you should be exercising for marathons for the specific distances. I've had a private chat with Bart on this sort of stuff, and I agree with that. The thing that I did bring up to Bart that I hadn't actually discussed in my private conversation, which I've discussed on this channel on countless occasions with you guys, and that's basically about taurine, how taurine prevents or minimizes the amount of heart remodeling. And a lot of these people, that's why you don't see like people who are marathon runners or people like this. You don't see any centenarians amongst them. You get a lot of people that just drop dead after a marathon. It's not accidental. It's because when you're doing a lot of this steady state cardio, you do a lot of damage to your heart. You put a lot of strain and stress on your heart. You cause more fibrotic tissue and also some remodeling, because the heart, when it actually gets fibrotic tissue, it actually slightly, as new cells are basically produced and all that, it actually causes certain remodeling, especially of the left ventricular, but also even of the right. There can be some constriction that can actually happen in certain areas. The thing that actually prevents remodeling is taurine. So if you're an athlete doing this sort of type stuff where you have to, because it's your occupation, you want to go to the Olympics or whatever, then you really need to basically have high levels of taurine in your diet to basically minimize the amount of heart remodeling. And that's a big issue with people doing steady state cardio and that's why they end up having very low heart rates. That's a cause of the remodeling, especially of the left ventricular. So when it's really low, and the best way to basically protect against that is easy, taurine. So there's so much literature out there, and I'm shocked that sports physiologists are still not teaching their Olympic athletes how to basically protect their hearts that are doing these sort of sports. but I wouldn't do that sort of stuff. I mean, I occasionally walk, and I have walked long distances, but it's not something that my longest walk was about 26 Ks. And that varied at the speed. We had a bit of intermittent sort of running in between and all that. So it sort of varied. It wasn't steady state all the way. We stopped, we relaxed, and then kept on going, a bit like, other people do. So personally, Kate actually has her 1 year anniversary as a carnivore. Congratulations, Kate. Well done. And yeah, that's sort of my view. I'm very much in agreement about the energy system as well, how it works in muscle energetics. I've looked at basically Bart's research and the stuff that's been done, and it's sound. It really is sound. There's a lot of, even in terms of the mitochondria, why would the mitochondria, the mitochondria have this sort of much steady state. And the reason for that is because you've got a protein gradients. I actually mentioned this in the earlier live stream. I don't know whether Bart brought that up, because I haven't really heard him say that, but it's part of that. There's a pool of protein gradients that can actually be accumulated, and there's only a certain rate. It's not going to basically increase, because you can only rotate the complex 5, which is ATP synthase, at a certain rotational speed of 6,000 RPM. So I think it's about, is it 6,000? I can't remember exactly, but it's a certain speed. I think it's around that, So at the end of the day, there's only so much. It's basically that will support, the phosphocreatine, and then that will actually support the actual glycogen. And remember, glycogen can't get out because it doesn't have that enzyme that can break it to get it out as glucose. So basically, it can only be broken down at that last stage to create ATP, to basically provide energy directly to those filaments, that are contracting and all that, those muscle filaments that do the contracting effect. And I've actually looked into some of the research that's there and looked at some of the actual, where they're using scanning devices to scan and see these filaments actually moving and the way they move and all that. So there's good information there about that. The problem is that we've still got old books when it comes to this area that have, and people they just reprint everything over and over again, and people just read the same reprints. They're not looking at the current literature. It's a bit like LDL. It's a bit like a lot of things. They're not looking at the current literature. And that is the big problem. And they're repeating the same reductionist nonsense they've been doing for some time. What can you say? But yes. And one other point that I remember Bart saying as well is that I remember, because he did mention it earlier today, and I did talk about because I've talked about him years ago. Well, not years ago, but it seems like probably 2 years ago when we were talking about the chimps, and we were talking about how they have more glycolytic type, fast twitching muscle fibers compared to basically they're very strong upper body compared to humans, and they do certain types of activities. They don't do cardio. And that's how they do more physical stuff, pushing, grabbing things, pulling things and stuff like that. They end up having these much higher glycolytic sort of high, intensity, their activities, where they'll rush up a tree in great high intensity and use a lot of, glycogen to basically, for all that energy for those fast twitching muscle fibers. If you want to increase those, you're going to be using more glycogen, obviously, and the reality is that's the type of activities is the sprints, the high intensity stuff, the lifting of weights, body, to basically a certain level of exhaustion, which is what we call failure. Those are the things that are really going to make stronger muscles. Not steady state cardio. That does the exact opposite to, the type of fibers, muscle fibers that are expressed. There are genes that actually express them. And then there are certain people that have got certain genes. Like I have genes that actually express more of these type, the sprinter type. And then there are others that have less of these sort of marathon type. And there are actual genes. I just haven't done the video to show you exactly my genes in comparison to other people. I will do it one of these days, just to basically, make the point. When these people talk about all this sort of stuff, why would you basically lift weights and then go and do cardio to literally undermine what you've already done? Is beyond me. But anyway, people do crazy things because they just are still listening to the old nonsense of years ago. Anyway, let's move on. Great for skin nails and joint, the bone broth, yes. Oh, I better switch over. G'day guys, it's Roy. That fucking arsehole Harry's out. He's gone. He's let me loose. How are you, Blinky? How are you, cream tart? Good to see you, Bert. Pumas and Coombs. Thanks, Bjorn. Fucking hell, you two are trolls. Poor Bert. God, what he has to put up with you two. Well, it's usually 15 litres of bone broth per week. God, bloody hell. You've been cooking up a storm? Yes. We all do. We all do. Good on you. Yes, she is impressive. the sort of levels. Oh, God, he's already trying to suck up. He's already trying to basically make a few moves. Desperado. Sounds of desperation to me. Nice. Lamb burgers. Yes. Dad actually does a combination. People should try it. He gets a third minced pork, a third minced beef, and a third minced lamb, and he combines them together. They're quite nice. So he puts a bit of salt and pepper and oregano in there. Sometimes he puts rosemary. I think the rosemary really is nice as well. And he makes a really nice combination of 3 different types. And you have to just think of it, pork has more thiamine, things like that, so all these different, animal foods will have slightly different, of the minerals and the vitamins combinations. So it's one way of actually blending a lot of, in one food, blending a lot of different types of, really nice micronutrient profile, fatty acid profile, plus sort of a good, micronutrient profile. And yes, so people should try it. Yes. The old boy he's always thinking up new ways of making meat interesting. Yes, definitely. Man after my own heart. G'day, Alex. Yes, she could do some recipes for us and just show us, do some. Yeah, you're right, Alex. Oops. She could do, what is it doing now? For freaking hell. Yeah, she should do. Cooking. Different styles. People have got. I'm pretty average when it comes to cooking. I do okay with a few things, but that's not my forte. But if you've got a forte, yeah, why not? No, Facebook. I think a number of people are sort of absolutely no idea. I did hear that he's on. What is he doing? Somebody said he was consuming biscuits or some sort of. How do you go from carnivore to biscuits is beyond me. So. Yes, it's sort of that's a bit of a milky experience for me. Yeah, he's on biscuits or some stuff like that. People have been telling me, so he's lost the plot completely. Yeah, I used to get on my skin like a red site. Yeah, I used to get a number of skin issues. I used to get a lot of pimples all over my skin, my face and my body used to be pimply all over the place. I used to get a lot of skin issues as well. The more carnivorous I became, the less all of that. I have no pimples on my skin anymore, which is great. But even when I was doing keto, a lot of it actually receded away. I had very little. Pimples had gone. The only thing that was a bit, here or there, but even that now is gone completely. Look, the closer you are to a species-appropriate diet, the more these issues just go. So they're so true. So much truth. Do you think so? He's a cannibal. Okay. So maybe he's got sick and tired of the YouTubia world and just decided to venture away. I think that wasn't that the guy that was actually somebody had actually seen him. The guy that the butter guy that used to say, eat butter and your pants will drop off or something like that, or fall off, or can't remember the statement that he used to use. And he was on YouTubia for a certain period of time and then just decided to pull the plug and left. That was it. No more to be seen. Somebody did mention in one comment, I can't remember on whose channel, that they had actually seen him, that he was still, alive and kicking, but just had given up on all that sort of stuff. Who knows? I mean, sometimes people can get run over by a vehicle, get killed by butter. That is Butter Bob. Yeah. Thanks, Alex. So people can sometimes get killed in traffic or who knows? A lot of things can happen to people. So you don't know what happens to people when they vanish for whatever reason. They could have done something inappropriate. I'm not saying that T2 did anything inappropriate. End up in the clink. Anything could potentially happen to people, so we don't know. And so, I mean, we're just being amusing now, but I won't speculate in any disrespectful way. He was a good supporter. Hope he comes back. But that's up to him if he doesn't. Who the hell is T? Bowerbird. Exactly. Thanks, Blinky. Just as I said it, Blinky. Pop the name up. Burp. You did eat him, you nasty troll. I've got a a fake Facebook account. Only 2 friends. I use it only for checking on my dojo group messages, karate and CrossFit. Fair enough, Melina. Watch one of Frankie's video. His business is falling. He's being sued by Honey Boy. Oh, Salad Boy, you mean? Honey Boy, yes. Saladino, okay. Oh, that's right. He is suing him. He has made his channel for a select few conspiracy theorists. It used to be a fun and thriving channel. Yeah, he's gone off the rails. Look, as I've said, people out there are making a lot of dubious conspiracy claims about a lot of things, and that's not healthy. The reality is the elites have been screwing us and controlling us for a very long time, since the pharaohs. Nothing new here. And the political classes, basically, all they are is basically an elected aristocracy. We elect them and they behave like an aristocracy where they can tell us what to do. There's only 2 points in the history of humanity where we, as a collective group of humans, came together and decided how we would run our tribes or how we would run our societies. That was for the majority of the existence of the human species in a tribal form. And then for about a certain number of years in antiquity, within ancient Greece, where there was direct democracy and institutions designed to allow for the proper election of officials, with limited tenure, and could not make any decisions in terms of policy. They could only basically implement or administer policy in those roles. So, the citizens were supreme in that regard. And that was a very limited time. After that, that pretty much ceased to exist. So today it's sort of, a different world. But the reality is, when up until very recently, if you take a look, the majority of the world was in a sort of a feudal state. And we believed in what we call emperors or god kings. That means people like the Japanese emperor was considered a god. And so most of these people were either gods or appointed by gods to rule over people. So this is the way. It was only very recent when we rebelled and actually demanded more rights as citizens and protested and all that to get more rights. It's a very recent thing. For a large part of humanity, we've basically been somebody else's bitch, slave, serf, peasant, controlled and abused. And that's the reality. It's a very recent sort of where citizens have basically reestablished some control over their lives. Limited, but some. But the reality is, all these conspiratorial things, you have to understand, when you listen to these sort of idiotic things like lizard people and all this is just nonsense. This is part of the old method of control. These people are basically shields for the elites. Throughout history, the elites have always tried to put themselves on a pedestal above the rest of humanity. These same tech and banking elites do the same thing today. They make themselves, they allow this propaganda of lizard peoples or whatever. It's intimidating. It puts fear. With fear, you can control. You get rid of fear, you can't control. You lose control. So fear is an aspect. So they don't mind this nonsense. If you think they're aliens or lizard people or this or that, you're too scared to challenge them. But if they're just people like you, they're a small minority. They can't do much when millions get out in the street and say, we're not going to put up with this crap anymore. That's the difference, and they know that. So through fear, through divide and rule, making people question each other and fight, and woking people and making them compliant and all that. That's how they work their tricks in basically keeping them in line. The problem is people like Frankie and all that, with all this conspiratorial nonsense, they don't help the cause. What they do is they undermine the cause, because for the woke people out there, when they hear these sort of things, they go, these people are idiots. So they're going to ignore them. And we need to get the majority of the population to understand how much their liberties are being compromised, how much we're moving closer and closer to a more totalitarian setup where we're told the expert will tell you what to do and you will comply. So these are the sort of dangers, how the erosion of liberty and democracy, the rule of law, and the rights of citizens to be able to freely move and live their lives, is being undermined. That's the issue, And the problem is when we get into this crackpottery and stuff like that, we undermine our arguments. This is the way they can control. The best way is to misdirect and create fear. The best way to create fear is to say, these are aliens, far more powerful than us, as if aliens would traverse. They have, from here to another solar system or whatever, there is plenty of energy to be had. They don't need to waste a lot of energy or even putting their own people at risk of dying to basically grab the small pickings that are on this planet. I mean, how stupid can you be to believe that sort of nonsense? For them, it's basically, there's planets out there. Even in our solar system, there's moons that have got more water on them than our Earth. Why would you not tap that water and waste your time? If somebody can traverse from another solar system, do you think they don't have the ability to tap into those sort of resources? Why would they waste their time fighting off a whole lot of primitives on this planet? It's just nonsense. Absolute nonsense and crackpottery, all these sort of things. But what they do is they create divisions amongst people. They create suspicions. They create fear. And that's what they generate. And people like Frankie and all that, what they do is they are fermenting the fear in the population. No different than the virus is being used to fear the population. These people are shills without even knowing it. That's how stupid they are. They are shills with these classes, basically pushing their propaganda to basically, scare the population. We've got nothing to fear. We're the 99%. We just need to wake up to that fact and demand greater representation and rights in our societies, and not be pushed around anymore and be treated like garbage, which is, I know rich people. I've been around them, and I've actually been screwed over by a number of really wealthy people, both in politics and other things. And I can tell you they are nasty, and they think the rest of us are just garbage. Believe me, I have very little respect for them. So, yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Yes. Kate's anniversary, which is great. We've all celebrated that. Fantastic. We should hopefully have more celebrations in the future with all of us. So I'm just going to cycle through these. Go fuck himself. Look, even I hoped his meat business would grow, because we need more people that can actually provide quality animal products out there, especially when we've got a climate where some of the big players are trying to push kibble meat, fake meat on the rest of us. We need to basically have companies and entities out there putting forward really good quality foods. So it's unfortunate, but You know, I said to Frank ages ago when we were still talking before he attacked Bart and it sort of we parted our ways. I said to him, you need to stop basically being triggered by people and you need to focus on the essential things. You know, focus on your channel, which is brings the people in, and basically do good quality stuff, and then focus on your business and work with your partner to make sure that business works. And stop being triggered by other people and getting into fights or getting into issues and stuff like that that are not going to help you in the long run and are not going to build, you know, a good foundation to support the carnivore community. But, you know, he sort of lost the plot somewhere. He just didn't have the discipline of mind that is required. Maybe because he's younger, maybe he'll learn from this experience and do better later on. One can only hope. But I did plenty of stupid things when I was his age as well. So I can't be pointing the finger, so to speak. But I can still criticize him if he's actually peddling shit now, biscuits and all sorts of other crap. You know, I mean, that's just, you know, even he knows that that is not good stuff to be peddling. You know, it's nutrient poor crap. Kibble. Oh, has somebody upset you, Blinky? Oh. Those were tears of joy, just to clarify that. You'll enjoy it. Everybody's having a bit of fun today, aren't we? Yes. Ah, great. See what a year does? I think also a lot of us have had, especially pork, has been demonized so badly, you know. Well, if you look at the North America in the 19th century, in Cincinnati was pork polis, like a pork city. They produced everything for the East Coast. And from the Carolinas, you know, Cincinnati's sort of like in the middle. If you fan out from this city in the Midwest, it basically from New York to the Carolinas, it like fans out in very similar, like radiates out at very similar distances. So it was in a good location to support all these different sort of cities with a lot of pork, and that's what it provided. And even in even tribal communities around the world have always consumed a lot of pork. The Polynesians took a lot of pork with them on their vessels as they moved through the Pacific, and a lot of the actual main food, land animal that they consumed was pork. So it's been in our diet for a very long time. No issues whatsoever. Even some of the longest living people on this planet consume quite a lot of pork, as I've made this point. So yes, it's good that basically we're starting to come back and realize that all animal foods have qualities and are good for us, and we shouldn't selectively demonize them because we've had the paleo people in particular, I would blame. And the paleo people know shit when it comes to some historical stuff, because if you look back, you'll actually see a lot of tribal societies and a lot of Northern European societies, you know, consumed a lot of pork, even way back to the chimps. Chimps, you know, two things that they consume: pork and little piglets they hunt, and little, you know, monkeys. The monkeys, primarily they eat, the males consume most of it, and they usually give a lot of the pork to the females for sexual favors. Yes, who would have known? Because it has more fat, and the women require more fat. They have got more fat storage cells, and so they get more benefit from that sort of stuff. So there you go. So our early evolutionary ancestors, common ancestors, would have had similar behaviors. Yes, so we've been eating pork or, pork-related products for a very, very long time. I have 2 farmers who sell close to me. I can choose between A1 and A2. I'd go for the A2. A2 is much closer to that of other ruminants and other, like even the cows at the Maasai, they're A2. The subcontinent Indian cows, A2. The Greek cows, A2. Most of the cows of the world, Africa and many other parts of the world, are all Southeast Asia and places like that, A2. So the A1 is only in Northern Europe. Now, the people who've got the best adaptation to A1 casein are the Irish, British Isles, and people in places like the Netherlands and a few other places around there have also to some extent. But other large parts of the world have had less multi-generational exposure to A1. I'm still on the fence when it comes to the A1, A2. I think it's more of a problem in terms of, if you've got leaky gut, don't have good stomach acidity, a low pH, that's when it becomes a problem. If you basically take in the proteins and you break them down and denature them and make them into their basic amino acids, it's less of a problem. If you don't have basically gut permeability, they're not going to get basically past the gut lining. So I don't think it's an issue personally. I think it's a modern day issue due to gut damage, due to emulsifiers, glyphosate, and many other things that are in our diet that do damage the gut lining. I think it's more related to that sort of stuff. And then these sort of foods become more reactive. Milk, eggs, seafood, and stuff like that. So I think if you fix those things, then you can basically, with a more elimination type, just meat only, sort of steak only type diet initially with some bone broth and stuff like that, and then sort of get the fat soluble vitamins up and sort of slowly start healing these part of the body. And then, you're going to have less reactivity. You can go back to some of these good quality animal products without any issue. But, I would still go for the A2, but, probably if your gut's fine and all that, and the price is an issue, then go for the A1. I don't have a problem as long as your gut is fine. Anyway, Black Forest region in Germany is very easy to get raw milk. Okay. You're lucky then, Marco. Definitely lucky. Look, I had similar, like in Greece, I had access to sort of, as a youngster, I had access to raw milk. In particular, like goat and lambs and stuff like that. But yeah, it's hard to get. I once was able to get, but I can't now get any raw goat milk, which is really drives you up the wall. Say no more, so I don't expose anyone. But yeah, it's annoying to say the least. It's not easy because I do like goat milk, but I don't like the pasteurized. Some of the products are just over pasteurized. It doesn't have and they take out some of they actually, it seems like they reduce, because goat milk tends to not have as much fat in it as it is creaminess. When you take more of it out, it's just, how can you do that to the damn thing? So, yeah, I don't know. It drives me up the wall what some food manufacturers do sometimes. Yes. Yes. Issues and issues and issues. Yes. Yes, good stuff. Oh, that was the Butter Bob stuff that we talked about earlier. My skin, or so it is now destroying my silver jewelry, my sweat. Yeah. Any ideas? Changed dramatic on cover. Don't know. I really don't know. I'm trying to think what could be. I suspect the jewelry isn't. It's probably got something else. It may be silver with something else in it. It may be mixed, and it may be reacting to whatever is there and whatever's coming. Not sure. It's definitely, there's something that's reacting, but I'm not exactly sure what it could be. Yes, interesting. I mean, the only stuff I've got like a gold ring, which is that I wear. I've got it over there, but it's like 100% gold. There's nothing. There's no, you know. So yeah, I haven't noticed anything. But if there are mixed metals, I'm trying to think what. I mean, I know, you know, obviously we sweat sodium out, but it's not the sodium. It's got to be something else that is actually reacting. You're potentially getting some of the metal more. I think the only thing you could do is literally take like a sample of your skin and find out what's in sort of the fluids and work out, and then from that do a bit of a Google search and find out what sort of metals react with these sort of things to work out, because it may not be the actual silver. I don't think it's the silver, but other things in there that are actually reacting. But I'm, you know, hard to say. Yeah, that's right, Jules. If it's actually yeah, pure, shouldn't have that problem. It's like gold, you know, shouldn't have, if there's got to be something else in it that it's combined with. But yeah, don't know. Yeah, exactly. What a joke. Precisely. Remember when Frankie used to pay out people like Sean for being a carnivore? Now he's a biscuit boy. Yeah, what a joke. Exactly. What a hypocrite. That is exactly it. You know, because the reality is, Sean basically will say that if somebody's poor in a food desert and can't afford to get grass fed and grass finished and stuff like that, you know, it's better to basically have a meat of this sort, you know, rather than eat plants. So, I mean, he wasn't endorsing this sort of, I mean, neither do I. I don't endorse this sort of stuff. I'm with, you know, Garland Farms and JD, and basically in regenerative farming and, you know, good quality animal products and stuff like that. But the reality is that, you know, Sean wasn't in support of this heavily, but at the same time, you know, he saw a lot of sick people as a doctor, saw a lot of sick people who had to amputate knees and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, when you're actually seeing that, you would rather have people eating, you know, poorer quality meat products than basically continue to eat kibble. They're going to be a hell of a lot healthier, you know, ultimate long term, we should be basically promoting regenerative farming and better quality farming. And if we're going to be pushing any subsidies or any support to the agricultural sector, that should be going to those industries, not to the kibble, you know. But that's a different conversation altogether, you know. So, you know, by going, you know, this sort of narrow and ignoring how Sean had nuanced that, you know, and now he's a hip, and now he's promoting, you know, this garbage biscuits, you know. What a joke. Spot on, T1. Blinky, you're spot on that. Yes. Yes. Look, Greece is the same thing, nose to tail. You know, we cook everything, including the, you know, the heads are delicacies as well in Greece. You know, so I mean, my father, whenever we used to do on a spit, sheep, you know, whole lamb, you know, usually Dad would grab the, you know, before the rest of us could get to it, he'd grab most of the actual the actual head. He loved it, the eyeballs and all that. He'd eat all that sort of stuff. Yes. Apparently he was eaten. Bird, that's it, bird brain. I called him that. I'm sorry, too. Come back, we miss you. Yeah, maybe you got a life. That's true, Jules. Maybe you got a life. Well said. Frankie takes a bite in his day of eating vid, then cuts, then spits it out. He's trolling. Who knows what he's doing? I mean, you know, yeah, there are weird things that happen. You know, look, I hope Hook Ride, I hope he does come back to the carnivore community and contribute in a good, constructive way. I mean, there are many other carnivores out there that do things slightly different. I don't sit around criticizing people. I try to basically provide the best, you know, solutions to people's problems that I can come up with, try and help people as much as possible. And, you know, occasionally I will critique other carnivores if they actually slip up on certain things. I do it, and other people. And if I slip up, you know, I've actually critiqued my own self when I've slipped up. And people that are regulars to my live streams have actually seen me calling myself out on a number of occasions. Yes, Roy has called out that Harry bloke out on a couple of occasions. Let me correct that. That's right. Because otherwise T1 will correct me. Blinky will go, no, you got it wrong. Yes, but the reality is we can all slip up. We all can all make a few boo-boos, so to speak, and we could all go down the odd wrong rabbit hole here or there. But the thing is, when you go out there and you viciously attack a number of other fellow carnivores in multiple videos, in a non-constructive way, but in a very nasty way, you know, it's not a good way of doing it. I know he's young. I know he's basically impetuous. Younger people tend to be a bit more self-absorbed, especially nowadays. You know, I remember starting working when I was a young child. You know, most young people nowadays have a, you know, I don't know. Look, maybe it's not that is a bit of an overgeneralization, but I think that when you work with other people and you have to learn to function with other people in a, you know, you learn to be more respectful in the way you conduct yourself. But if you basically, you know, you know, how can I put it? If you basically, you know, bag people left, right, and center, and then expect sympathy, you know, it's not a good way to behave, you know. So I'm not happy to see his business failing, and I'm not happy to see, and I think even Salad Boy's gone a bit too far in this sort of nonsense with litigation, and Frank, to some extent, should have not gone as far as he went with setting up a channel, an internet site, you know, really trashing, you know, Paul Saladino. I mean, somebody has to have somebody has issues if they're going that far. As far as I'm concerned, it's just wrong. You know, it's wrong to basically do that sort of stuff. You know, so yeah, what can one say? He's, you know, I mean, any person that would go out and actually set up a website, just think of it, set up a website in order to basically defame somebody else. And, you know, especially a lot of this homophobic stuff that he's been attacked with, you know, it's just the wrong thing to do. It's just wrong in many levels. And so, you know, this is why he's struggling to find sympathy. But I don't want to see, you know, I don't have a bad bone in my body. I don't want to see him suffer, you know. He needs to learn from these mistakes and get up, dust himself off and get on with it and start focusing on what the important things of life, building a business, building your own channel, and stop playing these stupid games out there with other people and potentially putting yourself in a state of liability and all that sort of stuff, which, you know, he's going to end up expending a whole lot of energy for a whole lot of unproductive activities and harm himself long term, both his business potentially, especially if, you know, Salad Boy decides to take legal action against his business and his assets and stuff like that. So, you know, there could be a lot of problems there. So, yes, he's lost his way in many ways. Anyway. Yeah, I don't, you know, I don't basically in any way celebrate or any way, you know, it doesn't fill me with any joy to see other people suffering or their lives fall apart, you know. But at the same time, they have to take responsibility for their own actions. They have to learn from their errors, dust themselves off, become responsible, and focus on what is essential. Those which are essential are family, getting your fucking business working properly, and basically focusing on providing a good service if you're providing a channel with a good service, and stop basically all this nonsense that he's got himself involved in, which is very unproductive, very destructive, and helps no one, neither himself or anyone else. Anyway, let's move on. No idea. Would fear itself. Yes, so true. Yep. Yeah, I attempted those sort of things in the early days, but yes, got nowhere. God, thinking with the other head. Are we, Flapnado? And that was with yes. We're not there yet. I think we've still got the ability for peacefully to force the issue. At the end of the day, violence, when it doesn't really, if we take a look around the world where excessive violence have been used by minorities to try and force certain issues, they've always turned into disasters. Take a look at Syria, take a look at West Africa, take a look at many parts of the world. It never turns out the way you really want it, unfortunately. But there is peaceful ways where if you've got enough people out there, if you've got millions out in the street like they had in basically, the Gandhi's time in India, it forced the British out. What were they going to do? Slaughter millions, hundreds of millions? No. When you've got too many, at the end of the day, they are a minority. At the end of the day, even in, look at what happened in Myanmar recently. A lot of people got out and protested, and even some of the police turned around and said, we're not going to get involved in this. And the junta is on shaky grounds. It could be toppled. That's what happens when you get enough people out there to say no. That's the sort of movement we need to create, to say no, and we want our countries back where we control them directly. We don't need to destroy our societies. What we need to do is reform our societies where we give power, transfer power back to us by mass movements. And that's everyone, because at the end of the day, I don't care whether somebody's left wing or right wing and all that. If they agree with me on the single concept of basically of true liberty and direct democracy and stuff like that, politically, they're going to be different. Once we have direct democracy, they'll be arguing a different position than me. I've got no problems with that. And the majority will rule. That's fine. But at the end, there'll be constitutional sort of protections against minority discrimination. That's fine. But as far as that goes, we will have, as a society, with blockchain technology, we'll be able to secure all these things without having anyone being able to control, because it's a decentralized system which we all have access to. So there are a number of ways you can set up a system that can work really well institutionally and all that. But it's a question of whether, and we don't need to tear the bureaucracies. We still need bureaucracies to provide services and stuff like that. The difference is they won't be basically providing kickbacks for their business mates and the elites. They'll basically be starting to do real services for the rest of the community. So, but that's where the community will have direct control or all that. They could also have a limited level where they have basically where they vet every piece of legislation. So politicians get in an assembly, they run certain policies, then they have to put it to the vote to the people to endorse it. And if they can't get an endorsement, it doesn't get in. So they have to be more mindful of the sort of things that they push. There are a whole lot of different levels and degrees of direct democracy or indirect type that can be to give people some control over their lives. There's a lot of things we can do, and we need to generate a popular movement. Through the major political parties, it's not going to happen. We need to create a third new movement for direct democracy. It's no different how the early capitalists, the early bourgeois sort of unified together, even though they had different opinions. Some of them were more liberals, some were more conservative, some had different type of views, but they all got together because they had a common enemy, the feudal lords. We as a population also have a common enemy, the old aristocratic, this sort of old money, aristocratic sort of bankers and now high-tech elite that have unified and basically want to control us even more strictly than in the past. And that's what we need to build, a movement to basically limit their power. And, the pressure on breaking these companies up, limiting their power, what they can do and all that, and getting regulation is part of it as well. They've got too much freedom to do as they like, and they need to be reined in big time. So, yes, we need to be a bit more cautious because this sort of language doesn't work anymore. It's just going to disenfranchise most people. We need to be a bit more sophisticated in the way we present ourselves as a popular centrist movement that basically wants to bring about political reform that limits the power of these unelected officials, small groups that actually run our society. That's a sort of movement, and a popular movement of that sort you can do. We've done it before with peace movements and all sorts of other groups where, if you go back when there was the nuclear era and the threat of nuclear annihilation, there were many people from both the conservative part and left-wing part and many other centrists and all sorts of people that came together, started saying, we need to stop before we blow up the world, So we can create such a movement. The Indians did it with Gandhi, around Gandhi. There were both left and right people from different political persuasions, but they all came together in a unified sort of thing to basically get rid of the British out of India. And they did, Then they went back to fighting between left and right. That's normal. That's how humans are. But we still can unify those forces to basically get to the next step of freedom. That's how we should work. That's how we've worked historically. Whenever we've brought more of the community together to fight for more liberty, it's actually happened. So they want us to keep us fighting amongst our different political clans because that's how they keep us divide and rule. So it's a matter of breaking that and creating a new movement that basically circumvents that programming. That's the sort of things that I'm talking about. And it's going to be hard. I know. Maybe I'm wishful thinking at this stage. Maybe we have to go through more hardship and more problems and all that before people wake up like they did. There had to be a lot of suffering and a lot of thing before people woke up in India and other parts of the world to take action and say enough is enough. It's hard to say which way it's going to go. I hope it doesn't go too bloody before it's too late. So, yeah. Hard to say, Bjorn. It's a difficult thing. I'm just putting up there an option that is less destructive to society. But I'm just one at the moment. Yes. God almighty, another conspiratorial toad. I think the Russians would have had a field day if they had known the Americans had done a little naughty thing like that. They would have milked it to the nth degree. You can take a laser and you can actually point it to a mirror on the moon that was left by astronauts and fire back and measure the actual distance to your heart's content. Reminds of the British East India Company ran countries, had standing armies and their own intelligence services. Some call it corporocracy. Yep, exactly. And they basically use divide and rule tactics and a lot of misinformation in the population to keep them divided and fighting amongst themselves. Nothing new, about the Maoris earlier when we were talking about the Waitangi Treaty, the early thing, Bart was talking about how, the Maori groups that had been at war between each other, how the British armed a few of them to basically, one of them in particular, to basically annihilate some of their competition so they could take most of that land over for Crown land on the cheap. So this has been happening for a very long time. It's not new, these sort of things. I don't see them as conspiracies. I just see them as basically tactics that these people use in that regard. I mean, you could call them some of their tactics conspiratorial when in some fashion, but we need to be very careful about the language because traditionally the word conspiracy meant somebody organized to do some, nefarious type of deed. But nowadays it's sort of promoted as crackpottery, which the word has lost its original meaning, which is a problem. So I tend to not use it so much because it always risks of being tainted as a crackpot. So you have to basically explain what you're talking about and mean it, and be able to provide some evidence to support what you're saying. So, and that's what I try to do. Yep. Those who control the money strings definitely do control a lot of the world. That is true. But we can still regulate a lot of that stuff, so we can limit that power. And the aristocrats, there still were aristocrats in ancient Greece, but they could be taxed by the majority, the commoners, and they could basically be controlled by the commoners, so they couldn't do whatever they liked. Yes, so... And then towards later, as the democracy declined, you know what they did? They created a new class of people. They were called the orators. Guess what they are today? The modern media barons. These people basically are the propaganda mouthpieces of the elites. And they actually convinced the Athenians to basically go to war with Sparta. And that's how they lost a lot of their freedom and democracy. And the Spartans won and imposed tyranny over the Athenians. Yes. Yes. Careful what you wish for. Not really. Not really. I agree with Bjorn. Money rules, always has. In the past, religion, money, and rule was in one. It was the god. It was basically the king or emperor. It's only in the modern world where basically, even up until very recently, 100-odd, 200-odd years ago in some countries, 100-odd years in other countries, basically only people that own land or capital, had wealth, had a right to basically get elected to any parliament. It was very recent that the commoners got rights. And then even far more recent, that women got rights. So, it's only been then. And what happened when that happened? When the commoners got rights, what did they do? They created a banking system that was separate from the sovereign. And they also created eventually even central banks that was independent from political power. Because, even the Federal Reserve in the US is controlled by the banks. It's not controlled by government, So the money men have always controlled one way or another, either directly or indirectly, And most of the politicians are, they get contributions from these people, big contributions and lavish parties and lavish gifts and stuff like that. All their families are looked after in one way or another, so indirect benefits. And so don't worry, they are in one way or another, part of, as I call them, the political aristocracy, the elected political aristocracy. But that's what they are. That's why, unless we have direct control over them, either directly through sort of using this electronic system to basically monitor and vote accordingly by the, endorsing. So either direct control or endorsing, what they do or say or whatever is a way to basically restrict what they can and cannot do. So there's a whole lot of different intermediate steps and all that are possible, technically possible, all that. We've seen some of this sort of stuff. We go around the world, there is some like initiated referendum and a few other things there are in some countries, like you get in Switzerland where, at the local level, there is direct democracy, and at the federal sort of level, there is some limited sort of through referendum and stuff like that. But we can enhance that. That's what I'm sort of trying to say. And that will limit their power. And then but they will fight tooth and nail. And they usually the propaganda they put out there that the expert is always right. How can you allow people, the average person? The average person sometimes gets more right than the expert. in many cases. The average person is just no different than any of them. Just because they've got a privileged position doesn't make them smarter. I've met plenty of dumb, wealthy people that just had more go and more risk takers, but, was dumb as, were just much more street smart and capable of basically seeing opportunities and exploiting them. But it didn't make them any smarter than many other people, and many academics that are much smarter that basically are not very wealthy because they just don't have that street smart mentality, the killer instinct, so to speak, to exploit others and make as much as you can, or circumstances. Okay, Charlie, what's your video on insulin resistance likely being cause of gout? Would you still explain getting gout-like symptoms 2 weeks into strict carnivore diet? It could be oxalates. That's the other thing, that a lot of people, usually once they get into a carnivore diet, they've had a lot of accumulated oxalates, and they could be dumping oxalates, and that could be a big fucking problem. So I've gone through some of that sort of stuff myself, and a few other people have gone through some of that sort of stuff. So there could be those sort of issues. Pure carnivore diet does not cause that, because we don't see gout or any of these sort of diseases in people like the Inuit or the Maasai or anything which are very carnivorous. It's not the carnivore diet. It's usually some dysregulation. You may have some underlying insulin resistance that never got fixed yet, or still is sort of getting better. There can be basically some dysregulation because, there is some source of sugar in your diet, maybe even masked sugar, I don't know, that's causing some dysregulation. There could be oxalate dumping, some other issues related to gut permeability. There's a lot of things that actually can cause disturbances in uric acid sort of regulation. So it's hard to say. You may have to do some tests to see where your uric acid levels are. Maybe consume a bit more salt to bring them down. Maybe your insulin is too low now, and you've dropped your insulin quite a bit dramatically, and you've dumped a lot of salt and you've very low salt, and then you're actually generating more uric acid, but you can't regulate it properly. It's really hard to pinpoint exactly stuff like that. Sometimes elimination is a good thing, dropping back everything to something basic and then seeing whether you feel better. The first thing that I would do, just to eliminate the issue of oxalates as a causal thing, is I would throw the whole citric acid in. So either buy a citric acid supplement, food grade citric acid supplement, or use lemon juice for the time being, if you don't have access to that, to try and actually deal with. You also need some sulfur. So whether it's taurine, whether it's basically MSM or whatever, you need more because you're stripping a lot of, you're losing a lot of sulfur amino acids due to oxalates, if that's the case. If you notice that you improve with citric acid, I would say it's more likely an oxalate issue. So, yeah, but you sort of have to check. You have to play around. Let me know, or send me an email with a bit more information. Beyond Supreme. That's what you're saying? I would agree. There's too much garbage on TV anyway as it is. I keep my TV off. I'm usually on the computer more than anything else. It's just garbage. Occasionally, the only time I actually use my projector is when I actually want to watch a movie or stuff like that. Beyond that is not much else. Yep, I agree, Jules. Yes, a lot of, yes. Take Putin. That guy's a goddamn assassin. He was KGB for a long time, then FSB, which is a current service. No one else could rule Russia right now. I disagree. Him and the actual oligarchs run the place now, which isn't a good thing for the majority of the people. So, but unfortunately, the population has never really had a history of democracy, had a history of direct rule, or had a history of these things. And it will take a long time for that population to change because they're so used to having a czar. He's just a modern day czar for them, unfortunately. They still haven't overcome some of those things as a population, haven't realized their potential as people. Pretty much. It's good profits in war, you know. What do you think the biggest banking elites, you know, the biggest, where? The City of London and New York City, you know, tells you about everything you need to know, and which were the biggest empires in recent times and the current times. Yes. There's a lot of money to be had from financing war, big profits. Basically. Yeah, the whole lot. First World War, Second World War, every single bloody war is, people don't go. Do you think people fight because for altruistic reasons people declare war? No. They want what somebody else has. And it's usually not the people that want it, it's the elites that want it. So they want to use humans as cannon fodder to literally go and rape and pillage somebody else's country so they can give their elites more stuff. And they end up being killed, maimed, and whatever else. Yes. I'm very much in favor of, you know, fighting as a citizen soldier, fighting for my homeland against an invader. I've got no problems with that. But literally going around knocking off a whole lot of other people so the wealthy people of my country can make more profits, not really into that sort of shit. I'm not that gullible. So I took the other pill and realized what those assholes were doing, using people as cannon fodder. I use a computer also for gaming. I don't use a console. Not into consoles. I actually am a keyboard and mouse man, old-fashioned first-person shooters and stuff like that. Don't mind some third-person shooters and a few other strategy games and stuff like that. But yes. Pretty much. Jules, never agree with Blinky. You know, even if he's saying something good, I disagree with him. Yeah, probably. Okay, I'm a bit slow. Is that what you're saying? I just had my woke moment there. I sort of felt that I was being... If you believe that, you'll believe anything. Oh, damn. I just lost my spot. StreamYard just gave you the finger. Anyway, lost a few. If you put there... yes, I'm not sure where I've lost my point at all. Did I lose? Hold on. Oh, God. I hate when this happens. Back before the comment then. Poor thing. Oh well. Hopefully he comes to his senses at some point, and we'll see. Okay, so Bert says sterling silver has copper and zinc in it. It seems with humidity, silver apparently reacts with sulfur. Ah, okay. So if you're basically consuming, because I think she may be, if she's consuming more sulfur amino acids and stuff like that, like in a meat-based diet, you've got more sulfur amino acids. If you're supplementing as well, taurine or MSM and all that, you're definitely going to basically be sweating out a bit more of that sulfur type amino acids. Okay, so it could be reacting with the copper and zinc in the actual sterling silver. Gotcha. Anyway, there we go. We just learned something. Thanks, Bert. Appreciate it. Jules just... She's probably right. Yes. He's that old, is he? Is he 30? Oh, I thought he was younger. I thought he was... Okay. There you go. Wasn't I wrong? Ah. God. Already was in a professional career by that stage, a bit earlier than that. And he's still trying to find his way. Okay. Anyway, such is life. Okay. Yeah. Oh, look, I don't... I know that Bart's high-functioning autistic, and sometimes he can basically become a bit exasperated with life and things like that. I tend to, even though I'm critical about things that are happening and all that, I tend to also be a bit more optimistic, and I try and keep myself optimistic and try and actually see that there are still people out there that are interested. There are positive vibes and all that, where he sometimes can go a bit too negative. Yeah, it's probably part of that sort of autistic or very... Yeah, the way... Yeah, it's just the way it is, you know. Yeah. That could be it as well. Look, I've unsubscribed from Salad Boy now for some time. Probably the second in Frank's case. Yeah, I mean, the problem is Salad Boy's adopted a lot of the repeat nonsense, some of the reductionist nonsense there. He's demonized a number of animal foods that should have never been demonized, especially when people in the 19th century were consuming far more pork and lard in North America than they were beef or tallow. The prime fat was lard, and the majority of the meats were pork. Go to Germany, the same thing. You know, so with modern transport, we've seen more beef become available in more parts of the world. So, you know, pork has been the main. Pork and chicken have been the big foods, big sources of meat for Asia and for many other parts of the world. So just because they've got more PUFA, if you go back 100 years, there was no cancers, there was no cardiovascular disease, there were none of these big killers that we have today, and the population consumed quite a bit of these products in different parts of the world, different variations, but still. So no, it's reductionist nonsense, and I can understand why people have seen the nonsense and the bullshit and realized it is bullshit, and these people are talking crap. So he's basically been hoodwinked by the Ray Pete fan club. The Strong Sisters, the same thing has happened to them. Their issues came from basically, being extremely thin, undernourished in terms of fat, and basically ending up with very little body fat and having endocrine problems because of it. Again, because of some of the misguided ways that they ate. Anyway, he has that effect on you, does he? Oh. He just annoys me. I just sort of, he's got this smuggish type, oh, I know the stuff, this sort of smuggish thing. Even though I understand more than he does, I don't sit there smuggish. I realize that I'm just a dumb monkey. The reality is none of us really know a lot of things. Even if you can quote certain stuff in physiology or out of physiology books and parrot certain things, it doesn't mean you truly deeply understand it. You got to understand this. We still have a surface understanding of how the human body works. There's a lot of gaping holes in our understanding about human physiology. And that's the reason why I say we don't have enough, even in the earlier studies, even in the earlier live stream when I talked, I said about a number of things. I said about the hemochromatosis and heme iron and non-heme iron, and I had a hypothesis and all that. And it's based on certain things that I've seen recently. But we did a study to really definitively prove it. But we have gaping holes in a lot of our research. That is the reality. We have massive gaping holes. And the reality is when we look back and we look at what people ate 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and we didn't have any of these diseases, you've got to accept that basically these foods that were consumed 3 to 4 times what we're consuming them today cannot be causal because they weren't then. All of a sudden, genetically, we didn't change within 100 years. Genetic drift or genetic evolutionary changes take a long period of time to become pronounced. There have to be certain pressures in the environment, and he calls himself a bloody doctor, and he doesn't understand these rudimentary things about evolutionary biology and makes these sort of claims and doesn't even look back and says that he understands Ancestral. No, he doesn't. He doesn't even understand that America, the country that he's born in, that he lives in, was basically awash in pork and lard only 100 years ago, a bit over 100 years ago. I mean, and people are quite healthy compared to today. And how can you demonize pork? So he has no sympathy. He gets no sympathy from me for being so narrow-minded and so, he is well-educated and has much less excuse not to do proper research. I go out of my way to go down rabbit holes and make sure that I've covered all bases, both historically, archaeologically, and many other regards. And, and when I do make certain hypotheses about things, I make sure that they are welded in good, at least some case studies, whether they are personal case studies or whether they're case studies of other people that have some credibility, but going to a rat study and some sort of reductionist nonsense isn't basically credible arguments, because it just isn't. And I think I've annihilated the whole notion of animal PUFA. When we look at all these ancestral populations, the Americans of the past, the Okinawans, the Icarians, where I've talked with Mary, the high consumption of that person that outlived his parents, that was consuming massive amounts, 7.5 grams of PUFA per day for decades, and was very healthy, the old man, out of eggs, primarily omega-6. He needs to explain this sort of stuff, but he, yeah, what can one say? Yes, but he's not, he's using his smarts. He's an intelligent man, but he's also very prone to cognitive dissonance. That means his ego is more important than the facts. So that's his problem, I think, primarily. That's why him and Frankie have those spaghetti westerns, because they're very much similar in some regards. Oh well, both are good names. Both are good names. I don't know who came up with Honey Boy. Salad Boy, I think it was Bart, but I'm not sure whether it was Bart. It could have been me, that I brought it up in a conversation that I was having with Bart, and it sort of stuck in one of his live streams. But I'm not claiming anything. I may have heard it somewhere else, but it was, if anybody can remember, in those earlier days, it was sort of hectic. And yes, it sort of came up. I'd have to go back and look at, or anybody that can remember which live stream I was on with Bart when it came up in a conversation. So, and I suppose, and the reason why we use that sort of term, or I use that term, or whatever, is because of the carbs that he was sort of promoting, bring back carbs into the diet and all that. So, it was sort of a, we could have called him Carb Boy or anything else. There were all other options, but Salad Boy just sounded a bit, a bit more jokey. You were fast. In like Flynn. Do you know that? Do you know that saying, T1? Yips. No, there isn't. You still got to live. Still got to feed yourself. It's only when you make money a god, that's when you sort of lose part of your soul. But you still need the dosh to buy things, to exchange things with. It's a means of exchange, but should not be worshipped. Look, when it comes to, when it comes to animal products and stuff like that, yes, he does support. So I just hope that one day he dumps some of that nonsense about PUFA and dumps some of that nonsense about honey, because neither are really good on a number of different levels. Honey, due to its high glycating effect of fructose and the high deuterium levels, the deuterium levels are really high. We're talking about levels which are very akin to seed oils in the level of deuterium. So not very good for the mitochondria. especially the quantities that he's recommending, 100 grams. So definitely not. So we've got to be a bit clear about that in that regard. And one thing else that I'll say, Bert, is after he put his book out, which had some really good information, I never read it myself, but other people that did read it did comment, and it was pretty useful information in that regard. How can then you go to this other sort of stuff is what lost me and Bart. You know, we lost a lot of respect for him in that regard. We do hope he comes back and rectifies that. We all can make mistakes and all, you know, fuck up, and I've fucked up in the past, and I've made it quite clear where I fucked up and when I fucked up, and made it clear that I did. You know, there's nothing wrong with admitting I'm human, I err, I make mistakes, and own up to them. What is wrong with people nowadays? They, you know, nobody wants to admit anything. God almighty, you know. It's like that politicians don't want to admit, you know, no, it's somebody else's fault. It's not my fault. No, just fucking admit. You know, a politician would actually gain more support in the population if he was damn honest and said, I fucked up, you know, but I've got a better solution than these other idiots, and this is a solution. You know, people would respect that because you learned from your mistakes. But, yeah, it's a crazy world. You know, we all want to be basically the perfect Kardashians, or, you know, it's fucking crazy. You know, nobody wants to basically fall off their pedestal or basically admit they fucked up. You know, God, the only way you can make progress in life is when you realize you fucked up and go, oh, I missed that, and move on, because we all bloody do. And we're all bloody fucking stupid monkeys that have just very little information or understanding about a lot of things. We've got a long way to go before we understand human physiology to the level, you know, like a Star Trek where you know where everything goes, how everything interacts and all that. We don't. We're still basically, you know, guessing a lot of things from anecdotes and all sorts of things. We don't have good science yet. And people that sit on a pedestal making out that we do are just basically being disingenuous, you know, just in the old days, they would say they're lying, you know, or making bullshit up. Oh, really? Hey. Surf flappers to you, Blinky. Surf flappers. I don't mind anyone here knowing my real name. I just don't want my real life people to see what I get up to here. I've only used your given name, not your surname. I wouldn't do that. I just thought it was nice to basically, like, you know, Vivid Mouse, and we call it, he's Richard, really, you know, first name. There's nothing wrong with that. So don't worry, Jules. Hey, tooth fairy to you. Just come over here and I'll yank a few teeth out of you. Lady Catherine. Oh, that's Blinky. Oh, I know it's a cheap shot, but I had to do it. You took a cheap fairy shot at me, so you got a cheap fairy shot back from Fairy Harry. Or, yes, Roy would never go to that level. You should know that, Blinky. Don't threaten me with a good time. Nice one, Fapnado. That's a good. I'll pay that. That's a good comeback. He's a lady like that. Oh yes, he's a fairy boy. He likes the hairy fairy boy. You know, Roy doesn't really work for him. G'day, Uncle Alf. Yeah, place is descending into basically debauchery as usual. Nothing has changed. You should know that. You've come at the appropriate hour. We're really just unwinding for the last half an hour into complete and utter debauchery. Yep. You really stepped into that, Fapnado, didn't you? That's a real... that would be a really interesting role-playing game. Just don't include the toad in it. Exactly. G'day, Mandy. How are you? We're having a ball of a time here, being very comical amongst ourselves. Ah, yes. Yes, I did hear that rumour. Yes, apparently that was the rumour going around. Remember, Melina's from Poland. She knows not much about the history of the British Isles and some of that, you know, the sort of things. Oh, God. Oh, well, what can I say, Melina? Yes, yes. They're shockers. They are absolute shockers. No. Get stuck into him. don't get him get him off the hook that easily. God. They only let flappers on the internet once a week. His guardian must have nipped out to the toilet. So true, Bert. Yes, so true. I'll definitely pay that. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That is priceless. Yes. He must be spying on you, fappers. Ah, yes. There are plenty of little boys in this place. Yes, plenty of them. Yes, I sort of succumb to that sort of behaviour myself to some extent now and then. Yeah, I know. It's pretty high. How's your liver? Are you supplementing anything, or are you basically taking, you know, methylfolate, or are you doing anything really that you shouldn't be doing? What are you taking? Have you checked your liver enzymes, which is the other thing? You know, because you could have an issue. And if you have, you know, the golden rule: get on high doses of taurine. Yes, taurine and R-alpha lipoic acid and milk thistle. That's the three combos for any liver issues. But first check, because it just because you have a high amount doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem, but it could be. do check. Oh, that's gold. Thank you, Melina. I definitely have to pay that. Yeah, I know. As a 3-year carny, my advice to new people is don't overanalyze and stress on any symptom you feel in the first 12 weeks. Just go with it and trust the process. Very good advice. Very good advice. Yes. Our bodies take some time to adapt to a change in dietary practices. And so, yeah, can take some time in that regard. Yes. Flippers is very naughty boy. Oh, is he now? How do you know? You seem to be very well informed. Actually, I'm going to get my cola out. I've got an organic cola. It's a kombucha. It's basically got bugger all sugar or any other really noticeable crap or whatever. This has actually got warm. I'm going to go and grab another one out of the fridge. Give me a sec. Enjoy something nice and nice and cool. It is quite warm in Hobart tonight, quite humid, which is quite annoying. But anyway, just the way it is, it is. What sort of attachment has Blinky come up with? I hope it is quite insulting of me. You want a bit of a laugh? You can't laugh at yourself. Who can you laugh at? Oh. Okay, so where am I going to store it? So this is from the live stream. Let me just share this. The video. Oops, there. And I think I know which one. You're doing that? You know, sort of having a spanking type video session. Is it how bad are you going to be, girl? How bad are you going to be? The audio's not coming through, is it? Hold on. Okay, let's remove that. Oops, nope. Remove that. Why isn't that coming through? No, that's, where is it? Oh, it's that. Yeah, I remember that. Audio. Let me share it.
Yeah,
are you gonna be spanking me while you're doing that? You know, sort of having a spanking type video session. Is it how bad are you gonna be, girl? How bad are you gonna be? You know what? Sky didn't reply after that. I asked her how bad was she going to be towards me. You know, how rude was she going to be? She ran and hid. Blinky, blinky, blinky. Methylcobalamin B12 doesn't absorb through your mouth's mucosa and is destroyed by stomach acid, right? Are we talking about the supplemental stuff? No, it actually does get absorbed. B vitamins aren't destroyed by any B vitamin is not destroyed by stomach acid. Neither is fat soluble vitamins or anything like that. Nope. But that's not the problem that he has, Sam. It's related to, because if that was to happen, we wouldn't be absorbing anything from our foods or anything. So, nope. Because the body actually breaks down everything into the basic constituents, basic vitamins, minerals, amino acids, fatty acids, and all that. And then basically uses biles and proteins and other enzymes and other things to pull these in, and then make use of all this building material and cofactors. So, no, there can be a number of issues. There can be basically some sort of underlying liver issue that you can actually release a lot of stored B12 out of your liver. And that can happen for a number of reasons. It's not dietary. It can also be in infections. It can be basically, some sort of, environmental toxin or poison or whatever that can come in and actually cause liver damage or organ damage and then cause this effect. So there's a lot of reasons that could actually happen. Your body actually regulates the uptake of all these sort of fat soluble vitamins and all that. There are transporters for minerals, for all sorts of things. It's for something to go a bit out of whack, there may be some other things at play. So you have to do a bit of an investigation. So, and that was, yep, that was HD. So yeah, get yourself checked out. And make sure they do some tests on things like different things, So you're getting, indeed from yesterday, you actually said here, so you're getting some tests done, I suspect. Good. Let us know or send me an email. The disposable, what a shocker. Modern world. It's what is it called? The modern Tinder world. Oh well. It's the modern world you young people have decided to live in. What do I play? A number of things I play, you know. I've played things like Call of Duty. I've played things, Ghost Recon type things, you know, the Tom Clancy stuff. If I go way back, I've played, you know, the Doom and, you know, Counter-Strike and things like all the Mafia series. I played all that, which is a third-person type shooter. Yeah, I've played a lot of games in that regard. Probably the hardest ones that I actually found were some of the old, I don't know whether people remember Raven Shield, the first-person shooter Raven Shields, which you just got hit once and you were dead. So you had to literally go around corners, you know, making sure that you covered all points to basically take out. And it took a long while to get through levels without getting shot. It was a really hard game to play to get through, but it was challenging. Now people just get killed and get respawned constantly over and over again. They get their dopamine hit. There's no challenge. I find myself more interested in not. I used to play, you know, like multiplayer and stuff like that, but I don't find a challenge, because if you can die and get respawned, you know, you're just getting a dopamine hit. You're not really being challenged. It's, you know, if I take you out, I want to take you out and I want to win the game. I don't believe in everybody gets a ribbon. If I'm the best, I should be at the podium. You should be at the bottom. Simple as that. This sort of everybody gets a ribbon is just bullshit. It makes for weak people. Doesn't challenge anyone. Doesn't make them strive to get better at anything. You know. So, and it goes again, and it's social media, the computer games, everything. Everybody needs to get a fucking little ribbon and be told how great they are. Sorry, I got on a tangent, but you know what I mean. Yeah, there's a lot of sort of the old games that I did like to play, but I do still play occasionally some of the old games rather than some of the new games. I find them more interesting and even more challenging. I'm trying to remember the other game that there was one that it was over the top. It just one after another. What was it called again? I haven't played it for ages. Serious Sam. Anybody played Serious Sam? I played it right through every single one of the Serious Sams. And it was just basically full on. You're just basically blazing, knocking off everything and trying to scoot through different obstacles without getting killed and knocking off everything, going sideways and all that. I mean, that was really a lot of fun. Anybody that's played Serious Sam knows exactly what I'm talking about. You know? I mean, what was it? 2 years ago, I actually played the whole series right through again. You know? So that was enjoyable. I had fun. Oops. I didn't bypass anything. You know me. I don't mind rude things about me. I know you like to basically think that you should be in lights up there, you know. You were sheltered. I mean, I know you were deprived as a youngster. I can understand that. Like that demanding little child. I want it all. I wanted everything. Yes. For vitamin C supplements, buffeted formulas are the best. they are also mixed with, I don't think you need vitamin C supplements. You don't. You get more than enough from animal foods, vitamin C. If you don't have any sugar in your diet, vitamin C is going to get into your, I mean, if you want to overdose on vitamin C, you might as well just have some lemon juice. You'll get more than enough. You'll actually get more than you need. But at the same time, it will also deal with any oxalate that may come from it. You know, because any excess gets converted to oxalate, and that citric acid would probably help clear it out much better than a supplement. You know, a bit of lemon juice. But I would, you know, you don't need a supplement. Only people with carbohydrate addictions will actually have difficulty absorbing low, you know, the animal food-based levels of vitamin C. The other people that actually have the problem. You don't see scurvy in the Inuit. You don't see scurvy in the Maasai or any other tribal population which was highly carnivorous. You only see it in people eating a sad diet and causing themselves insulin resistance, and you can't get in because the GLUT4 receptor is down-regulated because it's trying to keep all the insulin and sugar out of the cell. But at the same time, it keeps out the vitamin C. And as a consequence, it creates this sort of, you know, peripheral neuropathy and all sorts of other problems and stuff like that. So vitamin C and collagen breakdown and all that sort of stuff and whatever is usually a carbohydrate problem. You don't need it if you're on a carnivore diet. Believe me, it's a waste of money. And most of the supplements are too high, and you'll end up just giving yourself more oxalate. So, and burning through a lot of sulfur amino acids, which your body needs for a lot of biological functions. So don't do it. Oh, well, can't help you there. I'll leave that conversation for another day. As I said, I don't know anything about the product. So I don't like to comment about things that I don't know about. Sorry, but it's just, I'll look into it. So if you in future you do ask me a question, I will know how to answer about it and look from the mitochondrial side, looking at any of the frequencies of light, electromagnetic spectrum and stuff like that. I'll look at from a deuterium. In this case, it'll have an effect via the light signaling. But I'll be looking at all those sort of factors. And that's how I also look at all these things. So when somebody tells me something, I'll look into it, get all the schematics, find out, because I'm a technical person. I mean, I used to build things. So I have a very much sort of an engineering thinking and mind and you know, so know how things work, and I can understand them. And then I can look at the aspects, how they can affect human physiology. But that takes time. So giving you an answer. I know you've asked me, you know, but as I said, I don't know about this product enough. I don't like making comments on things that I don't know about, because we don't make bullshit up on this channel. We don't know. It's simple as that. I'm aware of quantum biology, you know, and the different light frequencies and photons and stuff like that. But I don't like making comments about specific products that I don't know about, because a lot of products are differently calibrated and do work slightly different. So I'm extremely careful the way I pronounce things about different products, because I have got myself caught out in the past where I made a remark which wasn't accurate entirely. It was partially, but not entirely, to my satisfaction anyway. Other people may have thought, they wouldn't have made much of it, but I wasn't happy with the answer that I gave at the time. So I'm extremely careful of not jumping on anything unless I've thoroughly checked it out. Should have never been demonized. So there are animal foodies out there to be demonized. Yep. Wild boar quality. Yep, exactly. Yeah, look, it's unfortunate and the problem is it also stems from a lot of this sort of stuff, the anti-pork, anti-chicken, that goes to and dairy, and also that also goes right back to the paleo community, because the first sort of ancestral type community that emerged was paleo in more recent times, and then from there people branched out into low carb and keto and all these other things, and so that was part of the demonization of some of these stuff, and nobody out ever, unfortunately, called them out. They never called them out, and God, he's delusional. Look at this one. How fucking delusional can you be? Harry's stream, Blinky's comments, and Harry apparently turns into them. Hey, I've missed some of them. This is not a true statement. God, he thinks he's special. He's a special type of person. Special needs. Let's move on. Oops. Oh, God. Where was I? I can't even remember now where I am. I'm losing track of things. Yep, there. Then that one. Yep. Yes, completely losing it. Yes, he's a Viking. Is there any high chance of Paul watches your videos? Frank took it too far, but I believe Paul watched his videos too, and the start of Frankie's. So, look, no idea. Somebody did say that. I can't remember who said that they thought they had seen Paul watching one of mine that was on Poofa ages ago, one of my videos. So I don't really know. I've got no idea. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But I think those two have really sort of gone off the rails in many regards. I think what Frankie did, creating a website, and really very poor judgment on his part. Even if you disagree with somebody, you don't do that sort of stuff. That's just wrong, as far as I'm concerned. That shows, there's a bit of creepiness there for somebody to go all the way of actually setting up their own, domain name and everything to defame somebody, especially, pushing certain, terms of sexuality and stuff like that. At the same time, when he basically has his own skeletons in the closet, is maybe it's a defensive. Look, I'm not going to psychoanalyze any of them. I've got no idea what they're thinking. I just think that really, it's in poor taste in that regard. And generally speaking, I haven't seen Paul really in any substantial way up until very recently. Paul, for the most of the part, has been ignoring Frankie, just ignoring him, until basically Frankie went too far and basically set up a domain name, peddling really some poor stuff. From what I heard, I never checked it out. I just wasn't going to lower myself to look at that sort of material, because I think that, looking at it is like endorsing it. So I said, nah, I'm not interested. That's just garbage. It's gutter. And people shouldn't be doing that at all. So Frank has no excuse for his behavior towards Paul. Where my criticism comes with Paul has nothing to do with the Frank issue. I don't really give a shit. That's between them two. My issue is primarily, let me just get Melina sorted out. Yep. My issue is primarily to do with what Paul's been peddling about PUFA and what he's been peddling about, honey. So that's pretty much where my criticism of Paul has been. It's a valid, based on good science and good legitimate arguments. Sugar from honey has high levels of fructose. Fructose is 7 times more glycating than glucose. So it is highly glycating to proteins and fats in the body. It's not a good thing. It would have been seasonally available, very limited for any population, to basically encourage people to take this amount. 100 grams per day is really bad advice, especially when there's good research to show that fructose uses the same pathway as alcohol. It's like saying to somebody to drink alcohol every day, quite excessive amounts. Not good advice at all. And that's what Paul's been doing, and that sort of advice is wrong, because one, it's quite glycating, and a lot of that actually will turn into liver fat. It creates a visceral fat. I mean, Lustig actually did experiments with young kids where they actually took out the sugar and just gave them pure starch. They replaced the sugar, the fructose-laden sweets, with starch, junk food and junk food. But the junk food was just basically all starchy carbohydrates. And you know what? Their fatty liver reversed. Within a couple of weeks, they actually had less liver fat, because glucose, while it may not be the most, you don't need to consume it, your body can make glucose, it doesn't have the toxicity level that fructose has. So the liver can actually store a lot of glycogen, massive amounts. There's actually even a disorder, I forget its name, where people can actually store massive amounts. The liver will grow to store. One thing it doesn't have a place for is fructose. Even though the body needs a bit, it can actually convert glucose to the small amounts that it needs. And there are a number of reasons why it needs it. There's glycosylation. There's all sorts of other biological processes where some sugar is required. But the reality is we don't require a lot, so excessive amounts. And the problem is that he's recommending things which are not appropriate for our physiology, which was one. Then he demonized PUFA in animal fats when there is no real proof in the literature. And the only stuff that he can point to is ones with seed oils. That means damaged fats, which come out of an oil refinery. So when you actually put research, which is dubious research, to make an argument, and then there is an entire edifice of historical data showing quite clearly that when you go back and actually look at just pure bacon, where I've shown, demonstrated with studies where it can actually reverse colon cancer that's been induced, pure bacon, where, salted bacon, where other things can't. So it actually quite clearly just demonstrably destroys that whole argument. But the other stuff that they put in the chow of the rats, when they don't give them pure bacon or pork, What do they give them? They basically give them a chow which is laden with sucrose, with sugar, and basically with seed oils, you know. So, and that's what they base their argument on, that it's the actual PUFA in animal foods, because they've put a bit of lard in there. It's just nonsense, you know. And some of the experiments don't even have lard. It's just pure seed oil and pure sugar, and they get the same results. And they still, Paul and many others have used, like the Ray Peat people have used the same arguments. The reality is the arguments do not basically stand to scrutiny. The reality is the source. You have to always remember the source is coming from seed oil, something that comes out of a refinery. That is not food. That is a toxin that used to be used, you know, in the past, before we had motor vehicles, we had you know, buggies and horse and carts and stuff like that. Well, it was used to basically as lubricant. That's what it was used as, lubricant. And for old machinery that didn't work at high RPMs, it could be used as lubricant. And a lot of these lubricants were replaced by petrochemical products when we started getting oil out of the ground. So then these guys had a gluttony of this oil and they had nowhere to sell it. So they repackaged it. It took them a couple of years to work out the kinks, the chemical kinks, how to stabilize it and all that, and repackaged it as food at a time back in the early part of the late part of the 19th century where there was bugger all regulation in food. And that's where they introduced it. Trying to introduce it now with a higher regulation, you probably wouldn't get it through. But back then, anything went. And, you know, they used advertisers and all that. And they commercialized and promoted it in the population. And that stuff is poison, you know. And even on the deuterium level, it's very high. It's higher. It's the highest amount. It's double that nearly of sugar at 255 parts per million, where even basically sugar is around about the 145 to 155. And honey is about 200. So that should tell you how bad honey is compared to even raw sugar. Raw sugar, in terms of deuterium, is around 155. That's still another 45 parts per million higher, you know, at 200. And too much deuterium and your body can't clear it out. It damages your electron chain, your nanomotors, your ATP synthase. And the more you damage of these, the more your cells become dysfunctional. They can't provide enough energy to repair and heal and all that. And over time, they become senescent, aged, and damaged. So not a good thing. And the way you know that is you take a look and see what is your elevated level of CD38 enzyme, because that's the thing that actually is produced by senescent cells. It's a sort of a stabilizing effect to reduce to dampen down the thing, because you don't want too much growth from energy, especially forcing senescent cells to undergo that. So it's a protective mechanism, but also it ages you. It's, you know, and these things tend to grow and increase when you consume these sort of foods. And Paul has no excuse, you know, because he's not a dumb person, you know, or an ill-informed person, to basically be promoting this sort of stuff. So Bart's tried to communicate with him. He basically just ignores him and to discuss these issues, but he doesn't want to talk. And, you know, if somebody doesn't want to talk, you basically say, well, that's it. You know, you leave it at that. We'll see what happens. You know, we live in interesting times, as they say. Weak sisters. Yes. Oops. Yes, very much. Yeah, I sort of did subscribe to them, because I've generally went around supporting. I mean, even channels that I didn't completely agree with, I subscribed to them to support people in the carnivorous society community. But when some people deviated substantially and moved away and started promoting species inappropriate foods, it just became too hard, and I just literally had to stop, because I just was so diametrically opposed to what they were actually promoting. N15, simple as that. We can play around and talk all sorts of nonsense about teeth and this and that, and things. We can still eat meat even with the teeth that we've got. Once upon a time, our species had a thing, but you can still eat meat. Doesn't stop you. So there has to be a biological necessity. Since we use our brains, we are able to cut up meat with stone tools, and we're able to hunt animals in a successful way. We don't need to make biological adaptations. We don't jump and leap like lions or whatever and tear flesh off animals. We hunt them down with spears. So we don't need to make those adaptations. And if you check my video on the savanna chimps, remember the video that I did on the savanna chimps? It's on my channel. You can actually check it. There's a link to it. I did it with Bart, and there's in one of my playlists and one of my chats with Bart, you will find the savanna chimps, and it shows quite clearly when the chips are down, and they will basically develop spears and go into hunting mode in a savanna environment. So we would have done the same thing, So why does it surprise people? But the definitive proof we have, if we ignore all this other stuff, which is very strong evidence as well, is basically the N15 isotope analysis. That's a slam dunk. You can't dispute that. All the bones of hominins around the world, of humans in the last couple of million years that we find, when we look at the collagen, it is primarily N15, not N14. That means the nitrogen isotope is not 14, which is plant-based protein. It's N15, which is concentrated in animal foods. Moves up, it concentrates. The higher the carnivory, the higher the concentration. Ours in the past, before agriculture, was in the super or hypercarnivory levels. That's a slam dunk. That's what we ate. Whether we like it or not, it's in the bones. It's actually in the collagen of bones of our ancestors. It's there to be seen. It's our ancestors calling to us and saying, we ate and lived on meat, period. There's no conversation here. No, when you have, it's like you've done the theory of relativity, like time dilation. You send a plane up, you've got basically an atomic clock on the Earth, an atomic clock on the plane that flies at a higher speed. That time piece slows down by a small amount. That is time dilation. That means that basically, that you've proven it, slam dunk. Anybody can repeat that experiment. Anybody can grab any piece of bone from a hominin or human in the last hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years from any part of the world and do the same isotope analysis and come up with exactly the same information, that it is high in N15, which basically means that it is basically protein derived from animal sources. It's indisputable. All the other stuff can be speculated, and people can make all sorts of nefarious, idiotic arguments. But at the end of the day, evolutionary changes only happen when there is pressure to happen. If you can basically hunt with a spear, you don't need to basically create fangs or claws or anything like that, because you're using other methods to actually hunt down animals. And the chimps are pretty good. They consume up to a ton of meat a year. So they do a pretty good job without any claws or any, things of that sort. So it's nonsense, absolutely nonsense. These things are not required. At the end of the day, you have to look at the isotope analysis, because the isotope analysis does not lie. It's a slam dunk. It's the definitive evidence of what humans ate. That the moment you look at the N15 data, it's higher than even other carnivores. We are super or hyper carnivores for the majority of our existence. Simple. Oops. Ex-anorexic women with not only autoimmune issues. Yep. Trophy wife. Anyway, we'll move on. The non-nutritional side of things. G'day, Dave. Good to see you. How's the weather in Barcelona? I hope it's good. It's a shame they succumbed to all the crackpottery and started eating sand again. Yes, exactly. Isn't full circle back to their old stomping grounds that made them sick in the first place. How bloody ridiculous. I do apologise. I'll be a bit more ruder next time. Yes. I do really apologise for giving you a good time. Sweetie. You cretins. Oh, God. I love you, Blinky. I don't know why I'm crazy, but I... push him under the water. That was a Freudian slip. Harry's dungeon is a dentist's office. I'll actually take you to my Tony. He's a Buddhist monk and a dentist. You know, I mean, interesting options. Yes, Tony can be a bit firm when he does things. You know, it's a sort of probably the monk coming out of him, the Buddhist monk. You know, no pain, no gain. Oops. I imagine Roy serenading flappers in his hot tub now. Hey, I like my fairy man. God, Mira's going to hit at some stage, probably listen to this and go, what the fuck are you talking about? Such a boomer. Yes. Yes, we all do. Such is life, Mandy. We all do. They are still people who value individualistic ideas over biological objectives. These, you will never hear them defend their own genetic expression. Look, yeah, they have funny ideas about a number of different things. I think they seem to be a bit extremist in some regards, in the dietary, in particular, there, in the way they approach things. And I think that's some of the stuff that got them. When you go down to very low body fat, you're going to have problems. You're going to definitely have problems. Did you now? Yes. I know he's a bad boy. Yes. See, Roy's the really good one. You're such a hopeless romantic, Flappers. Oh, nice one, Bjorn. He's like a cracker, old Blinky boy. Greta Thunberg, Man of the Year. Oh, God, I wouldn't want to wish. God, she's getting old, isn't she? She looks really bad. One, she hasn't hit puberty yet, and she's starting to look like a grandmother that hasn't hit puberty. The wonders of the vegan diet. Yes. Liver enzymes seem fine. Type 1 diabetic, only supplement vitamin D. Are you a type 1 diabetic? Okay. That's a different kettle of fish altogether. Have you considered taurine? You should consider taurine. Taurine is really good at dealing with a lot of the fibrotic tissue that can actually, or damage that can actually happen in. Yes, actually, that's for a future video. I'll leave it at that. There's a few things there. Expect a future video on that subject. I may actually bring it forward. That's not carnivore. Hey, and you thought you were on a carnivore channel? You just realized that? This is a comedy channel. It's Flappers, Fairy, and the Blinky Boy. Where have you been, Jules? Yes. Blinky, the trans toad. Yes. It's taking him a long time to transition from frog to toad. Wacky Toaster, good to see you. Yeah, this live stream is sort of degenerated, as you can see. I am answering some good questions that need to be answered. I'm not neglecting some people that have come here to learn a few things. Oh, did she now? Yes. That girl and me have to have a very, very one of those special conversations. Yes, I've lost all track of I think I remember what it was, that other about absorption. Yes, the stomach thing. Yep, the acids and stuff like that. Yep. Just remembered. We're all over the place. That's why. Yes, I will be doing something on diabetes 1. So look forward to it. Probably some vegans around the needs an injection of fat-soluble vitamins. Fappers, you should help them out. Oh, God. Fappers injecting vegans. Oh, God. It's a concern. Bjorn, you shouldn't be recommending this. Jeeps. Even short. Anyway, guys, I'm right. It is 9:30. We're way into it. I probably missed a lot of, answers, questions, things that people wanted to know and stuff like that. I'm going to wind it up. And I do appreciate everybody being here. The Royanator. Yips. There. Get the fingers right. Yes. Thank you, Blinky. Yes, the Royanator. And let me just check. I make sure that I didn't miss anything. Did you post any other naughty stuff for me? Is it a different one, or is it the same one? I think that's the same video, isn't it? Okay. I noticed a few things there. Animal products are nutrient dense, so why eat anything else? Ted Naiman says that high energy, low protein leads to obesity. Depends what state. If you're in ketosis, you're basically going to be satiated and it's going to be less of an issue. But obviously, excess energy can be an issue. But Ted Naiman also has a tendency of promoting very little fat and sugar and a lot of protein. Now, I don't think that is optimal for endocrine systems and all that sort of stuff. Now, I wouldn't disagree with that our bodies can handle quite a lot of protein. They can. I mean, I showed that study where it would be the equivalent of 30 years of a human with that rodent that basically was able to consume massive amounts of protein, 70% of the diet being protein, and basically having no health problems whatsoever. So in that regard, but I don't think that is actually good, especially for women. Women need more fat. Men are probably better adjusted for sort of high protein. And you can even see it in the chimps. The chimps have they have basically 0.005% of body fat. They're basically fuck all body fat in that regard. We have far more. We do have a larger brain, so we do need more energy for that. And we prefer getting it from ketones and fat rather than, but I still think that it's a 1-to-1. So unless you're trying to lose weight, 1-to-1 is much healthier than excessively high protein. But if you're trying to lose weight, then go more high protein and definitely take out all the sugar, but drop the fat to some extent so you can burn your own fat. So, if you're fat adapted, that's not going to be a problem. It's going to be very easy to do. So, yeah, that'd be my view on that, Dom. Evolution gives, we know what DNA is made of, totally misguided, non-endeavor for anything. Some would argue through that it was directed by some superior being. I actually don't. I actually believe in evolution, but I actually believe in God as well. But I actually believe, the way I see it is that God initiated the whole universe. The Greek Orthodox faith doesn't actually support creationism, doesn't reject it or support it. It has a neutral position. The way we view it is that we don't see creationists like it's a human interpretation, the 7 days. It's not basically a literal. We don't believe in the Bible in a literal way, because if you believed in the Bible in a literal way, you'd find so many contradictions, you'd reject the Bible. It's basically a theological book. It's a book to basically teach a moral code and basically, teach us how to get closer to God and all that, and how to move away from darkness and closer to the light. But at the same time, God doesn't play dice, or, he basically just, even when he comes into this realm, he comes in a human form. He doesn't directly basically come in, this plane of existence is playing out. And we have a certain level of what we call free will within religion, which is basically the freedom to make choices of good and bad, or where we want to be on a spectrum, and stuff like that, how we want to live our lives before we get judged at the end. And so that doesn't negate any of the science, the way the universe works, or anything like that. And if you take a look, the universe is expanding quite rapidly and all that. And it started from, a big bang and has been expanding. So it had a point of creation, and then evolved over those laws. I mean, God set the laws in motion and allowed us to evolve within that. When we fell from grace, we fell into sort of an animalistic sort of state. And then we sort of found our way back. So it doesn't completely preclude that. It's only when you start thinking in terms of very literal and all that, you realize, when you look at anthropological, all this other evidence, and, something just zapping into existence. If we could explain a cyclical universe and prove it, then I would change. It would basically really put a big dampener on my religious faith. But as long as we've basically, most of the evidence now shows quite clearly that the parallel universes and all that is to bunkers, M theory, string theory, that's all junk. There is no thing. We have to then come to the conclusion that there is an anthropic principle, that basically the universe came about to create intelligent life. So there was a sort of design in the outcome. It may have, evolution and all the laws of nature being put into place, the things that we discover, but they were put specifically in this way, designed in this way to basically play out in this way of God, the way things to play out. So there's no contradiction between, and the early scientists that basically accepted this anthropic principle were quite comfortable with both faith and science. It's only in the more modern, when the rationalists sort of came into play, and they basically thought that they could use mathematics to rationalize and explain the world. But the reality is, mathematics don't always reflect reality, observable reality. So, yes. And who keeps liking Harry's live stream before me? Thanks, Tom. Yes, don't forget to hit the like button. Fuck, I have to go. God, it's way past 9:30, and I have to do a couple of things and then get to bed because I got work tomorrow. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it for being here. We had a lot of fun. Yes, Blinky. It wasn't too bad in trolling today. Flapnado didn't do a bad job either. And yes, it's bedtime for some of us in the eastern part of Australia. And I did enjoy all your company, a bit of banter. Thank you for the questions as well, and the laughs. And I will see all you lovely people next week, where we will be on. We won't be on StreamYard. We'll be on the other one. Now, I hope we don't get any buffering like we got a bit of buffering last time. But, you know, it's going to be always StreamYard for the four, whenever we've got in the month, 4 days, we can do it all on StreamYard. When we've basically got 5, like that's when we can't, because there's not going to be enough hours on the StreamYard. Or if I go over my limit, I'll have to shift to the other one. But that's just going to happen on the weeks where there are 5 Sundays, not 4 Sundays, just the way it is. Anyway, yeah, thanks, Blinky, as well. And oops, I'm down here. The loser stream. Oh, set for the Euro trash. Isn't he wonderful? Isn't he wonderful? Oh, he's a Bob. Yeah. Oh well, I could characterize him as something very different, but anyway, we won't go there. Anyway, thanks, guys. See yous. Aussies are the best. What can we say? Thanks, Tom. Anyway, see you guys. I loved it. I had a lot of fun, and you know, let's do it next week again, and you know, enjoy ourselves. And you know what? Also, I've actually said that if some of you guys do want to come on, and you know, a bit of banter and stuff like that, I don't mind. You know, we could do something like that. Have a few of you more adventurous guys. You know, I've dragged Lukey on. Now he's become a bit more regular, which is nice to have him on. But you know, if any of you guys want to come on and have a bit of a banter, a bit of a joke, and all that, obviously for somebody that I've never known, it's probably not going to be the case unless you're a supporter, long-term supporter. In that case. Because I always like the banter. I don't want some lunatic that's basically going to think that they, you know what I mean. You know, I like the nice banter, good information and stuff like that. The lightheartedness. We don't need any of the crazies, so to speak, in that regard. So, had a good time. Thank you, and take care. And we will chat next week. See you guys.